Chapter 25. You brat, you've never cared about anything and have no interest in the company. All right, I won't force you. Ever since you got married, you've been throwing a tantrum. I know you've been unhappy, but you can't mess around like this. Dad, please believe me. The profits these two companies can bring in the next few years will be very impressive. Ji Hongwon was about to say something when he paused. This daughter of his had always been willful since she was young. Ever since her mother passed away and he remarried, she had never been polite to him. It was rare that she did not argue with him every time they called. But earlier she said, "Dad, please believe me." Such a sincere and modest tone did not seem to come from Ji Hongwon's mouth at all. Hongwon paused for a moment, his tone still not good. Go back to the Ji home right now and explain things clearly. I'll send a driver over to pick you up. There's no need to pick me up. I'll drive back myself. Ji Hongwon's cold had already recovered. She originally planned to visit Xia Tian at the hospital after changing her clothes. She slowly said, "Xia Tian got into a car accident a few days ago and fractured her calf. I'll go to the hospital to visit her first." All right, be careful when you drive. Don't be rash. Although Ji Hongwon's tone still sounded as cold as before, it had more or less eased up a little. Ji Hongwon smiled. "I'll be back before 6. Dad, don't forget to ask Auntie Chin to leave some food for me." Ji Hongwon was not used to his daughter suddenly speaking to him in such a gentle manner. He did not make a sound for a long time and finally hung up the phone with a ka. At around 6, Ji Hongwon drove back to the Ji home. The car had just entered the front yard of the Ji family's old home. Ji Mengran was playing with her phone on the balcony on the second floor. When she saw Ji Hongwon's figure, she immediately put down her phone and looked toward her in shock. "Big sister? Why you back?" Ji Hongwon appeared as though she did not see her. She parked the car and walked in. Auntie Chin had already come out to welcome her. "Eldest miss, you're finally back. It's been several months since I last saw you." "Auntie Chin, did you miss me?" Ji Hongwon smiled as she held onto Auntie Chin's arm. "Of course I did. How could I not miss you? Mr. Ji said that you'll be back for dinner tonight, so I specially made your favorite braised pork ribs and steamed lotus root." Aunt Chin smiled and patted her hand. "Now that you're back, do you want to stay at home for a few more days?" Before Ji Hongwon could reply, she saw her stepmother, Shinharu, walking out as well. Seeing that she had really returned to the Ji family, Shinharu's face was full of smiles as she pushed Auntie Chin to the side. She held Ji Hongwon's hand and said, "Hongwon, if you still hadn't returned, your father would have charged to the Mo family to demand for you." Ji Hongwon glanced at her and coldly withdrew her hand from her arm. She turned back to ask Auntie Chin, who had been pushed to the side, "Where's my dad?" Auntie Chin hurriedly said, "Mr. Ji hasn't been in a good mental state recently. He said that he was going back to his room to take a few pills before coming down." "Take medicine?" Ji Hongwon's expression did not change as she quickly walked up the stairs. "Ai, Hongwon, don't quarrel with your father the moment you return. Ai, this child, why are you in such a rush to leave?" Shinharu pretended to instruct her, but her gaze swept towards Auntie Chin, fiercely glaring at her. Auntie Chin retreated and did not speak further. Ji Hongwon quickly arrived outside Ji Hongwon's room. Just as she was about to knock on the door, she heard the sound of a cup being placed on the table. She decided to push the door open with force. Pang! A loud sound came from the door. Ji Hongwon held 2 white pills in his hand. He turned to look at Ji Hongwon, who had suddenly barged in, and frowned in displeasure. "How old are you? You don't know how to be serious. Why are you making such a big commotion just opening the door?" "Dad." Ji Hongwon walked over and reached out to stop him before he could place the pills in his mouth. "What medicine is this?" Ji Hongwon snatched the pills from his hand and then picked up the small medicine bottle on the table to examine it. It was filled with small English words. The general content was that this was a bottle of nourishing medicine suitable for middle-aged people to strengthen their bodies. "This is medicine that your Auntie Chin specially brought back from overseas when she went on a vacation. It's a whole set of health supplements. There are pills and pills." Ji Hongwon spoke simply and then looked at her unhappily. "Didn't you say that you would be back before 6? It's almost 6:30. You have no sense of time at all. It was rush hour earlier. There was a traffic jam, Jean-Wan said as she held the medicine bottle tightly in her hand. In her previous life, Jean-Wan felt that there was something strange about her father's death. Back then, because she had always been going against her family, she was not able to stay by her father's side even after he passed away. She had only seen him one last time in the hospital and did not have the chance to learn the true cause of his death from the doctor. However, on the death certificate, it was written that he had died from respiratory failure and a sudden heart attack. In her impression, her father's health had always been very good. He was only 50 when he passed away. How could his health suddenly deteriorate to such an absurd degree in just a few years? Even if the Ji family had gone bankrupt and was unlucky to a certain extent, it should not have caused him to die from a sudden cardiac arrest overnight. At that time, she was not at the Ji home and was not clear about the situation. Earlier, when she heard Auntie Chin say that he was taking medicine in his room, Jean-Wan suddenly thought of this. Her father was not sick at all. Why would he suddenly take medicine? Shen Haru said that it was a health supplement, so it must be? Jean-Wan did not forget that many of Shin Haru's family members studied medicine and concoction. What exactly was going on with this medicine? It was definitely not simple. Why are you still holding on to my medicine? Hurry and put it down. Ji Hongwen stood up and glared at Jean-Wan. Also, you have to give me a proper explanation about those two companies today. Jean-Wan raised her eyes and avoided this topic. She seriously said, Dad, can you let me take this medicine for a few days? I'll let the people from the Food and Drug Administration check the ingredients inside. Ji Hongwen furrowed his brows and angrily said, Nonsense. Check what ingredients? Your Auntie Shin has been married to me for more than 10 years. How can you suspect a medicine she buys? No wonder even though we both call her Auntie Shin, Meng Rant's relationship with her is as close as a mother and daughter. Yet, you treat her as though she's your enemy, never giving her any face at all. The room door was suddenly pushed open. Ji Meng Ran gently pushed the door open and stood there. She stuck her head in and obediently asked, I just passed by and heard the commotion inside. Dad, big sister just came back, and you two are already quarreling again? It's none of your business. Get out. Ji Hongwen glared at the door. Ji Meng Ran made an "oh" sound and gently closed the door. Although her father had yelled at her, Ji Meng Ran was not affected in the slightest. Instead, she gloated as she walked away. Chapter 26. Aunt Chin and the Ji family's servants had already prepared dinner. When Ji Hongwen came downstairs, Shin Haru and Ji Menggran saw his cold and stern expression. He didn't even look at Jean-Wan, who was behind him. Seeing this scene, Ji Menggran took the opportunity to speak up. Dad, don't be angry with my sister. It's rare for her to return home. She must have gotten into an argument with brother Jingshen. Why don't you just let her stay at the Ji home tonight? Anyway, even if she returns to the Yu Garden, brother Jingshen might not be there. What's the matter again? Ji Hongwen glanced at Jean-Wan behind him. It's been half a year. When will you stop thinking about divorce? Jean-Wan looked toward Ji Menggran. Very good, he was going to attack her as soon as he arrived. Ji Menggran knew that her divorce was the fuse of the conflict between her and her father, but she still brought it up. Shen Haru did not speak but glanced at Jean-Wan. She knew that Jean-Wan would always make a fuss because of Mo Jingshen's matters. She did not speak and calmly waited to watch the show. Dad, I came back this time to apologize to you. Before she walked to the dining table, she reached out and took Ji Hongwen's arm. I was too capricious in the past. I didn't know that everything you arranged for me was the best. I always went against you. I'm really sorry. Ji Hongwen's expression faltered as he looked at her in astonishment. They actually didn't quarrel? Jean-Wan actually apologized? Ji Menggran and Shin Haru did their best to conceal the shock in their eyes. How was this possible? In the past, I was too stubborn. After marrying Jingshen, I kept throwing a tantrum because I was unhappy. But after all, a person's heart is made of flesh. After a long time, you will realize the good in each other. Now, I don't want a divorce, and I've decided to live a good life with Jingshen. I won't let you worry about me anymore. As Jean-Wan spoke, She sat down with Ji Hongwen and suddenly turned to look at Ji Menggran. Actually, I've already mentioned this idea to Menggran a few days ago, right, Menggran? Ji Menggran froze for a moment when the topic was suddenly directed at her. Jin Wan had indeed said this before. Ji Menggran had been lucky enough to think that she had given up on the divorce because she had lost her mind for a moment, and she had never told her father about it. Ji Menggran couldn't lie in front of her and could only smile. I left in a hurry that day and almost forgot about it. Sister did say that. She said she had thought it through and didn't plan to divorce again. Ji Menggran suddenly brought herself up. Ji Menggran couldn't lie to her. Jin Wan smiled at her. It looked like they shared a deep sisterly love and smiled at each other tacitly. However, Ji Menggran was Ji's smile. Jin Wan smiled at Ji. You believe me this time, right? I really want to be with Jing Shin. Jin Wan held onto Ji Hongwen's arm. Her voice was soft and gentle, like a little girl who had always been obedient and acting spoiled. Jin Wan had never acted coquettishly since she grew up. The softness in Ji Hongwen's heart was touched, and his anger immediately lessened. All right, it's good that you know Jing Shin is good. After marriage, two people need to get used to each other. It's not too late for you to think things through. If there's any conflict between the two of you, just tell the family. Don't always throw a tantrum, and don't always be so immature, understand? I understand, Dad. Jin Wan leaned her head on his shoulder. I apologize for the wrong things I said and did when I was stubborn in the past. Please don't be angry at me anymore, okay? Humph, there's no use in apologizing now. Let's not talk about anything else. Don't think that you can easily get away with the matter of those two companies. I'll explain this matter to you later. Ji Hongwen clearly still felt that she was unreliable on this matter. He waved his hand to say, all right, let's eat first. It's rare for you to come back after getting married. It's not easy for you to have such an understanding. In the beginning, I didn't expect you to return to the Ji home with Jing Shin. But now that the relationship between you two has improved, you should come back with him. Don't always be alone. If others see you, they'll make a big fuss about your marriage. That's right. Nuan, since you want to be with Jing Shin, why didn't you come back with him? Don't tell me you're just coaxing your father? The moment Ji Hongwen finished speaking, Shinharu interrupted. Her face was full of smiles, but her eyes carried traces of mockery. Ji Hongwen glared at Shinharu. It's none of your business. In the morning, I was the one who called Jin Wan to come back immediately. It was just a spur-of-the-moment idea. Jing Shin isn't someone who has free time all the time. How could he possibly find the time to come back with her? But I feel that big sister and brother Jing Shin's relationship isn't that reliable. A few days ago, they were clearly fighting so hard. Ji Menggran muttered softly as she ate. Previously, they were clearly about to fall out. Suddenly, you're saying that you're not going to divorce him. Big sister, do you have other thoughts and are purposely hiding it from us? Ji Menggran spoke with an innocent expression, as though she was just asking out of curiosity. Jin Wan continued holding on to Ji Hongwen's arm, coldly glancing at her. What thoughts can I have? Jing Shen and I have been married for quite some time. After spending so much time with each other, we should just stay together. Marriage is simple. Why would there be so many messy thoughts? Why would there be so many whys? That's right. It's best to keep things simple. Ji Hongwen nodded. After Jin Wan's coquettishness, this father's heart, which had been dulled by her, was slightly unable to adapt. However, he was also very gratified. Actually, before Jin Wan returned to the Ji home, she had indeed planned to ask if Mo Jingshin had time. However, after considering that her father was going to question her about Han Tianyuan's two companies, and that Ji Menggran and Shinharu were still at home, she knew that she would definitely be in a mess when she returned home. Thus, after much consideration, she did not mention this matter to him. Furthermore, she did not wish for Ji Menggran to have any more contact with Mo Jingshin. Otherwise, she would feel disgusted. Ji Menggran endured it and did not speak further. However, she secretly glanced at Shinharu. The relationship between Jin Wan and her father was becoming more and more rigid. The one benefiting from this was definitely Shinharu. Right now, Jin Wan was suddenly so obedient. Seeing that the ice between father and daughter had been broken, how could Shin Haru still sit still? Auntie Shin, don't you feel that my sister has changed a little too much? Ji Mengran casually asked. Right now, Shin Haru was indeed suspicious. Why did this Ji Nuan suddenly change? Why was she so obedient and sensible? Nuan ah, Auntie Shin hasn't seen you for a long time. Come sit by Auntie Shin's side. Shin Haru smiled as she pointed to another seat by her side. That was a seat slightly further away from Ji Hongwen. Ji Nuan did not move from the seat closest to Ji Hongwen. It was as though she did not hear her words. She calmly said, Dad, there's nothing wrong with your body. In the future, don't take too much medicine. Those unclear medicines sound like health supplements, but in reality, they will more or less destroy your body's resistance. Chapter 27. Ji Nuan glanced at her, asking with a smile that did not seem like a smile, Auntie Shin, what's wrong? You can't even hold your chopsticks properly? Could it be that you've taken too much medicine from overseas? Look at what Nuan is saying. Earlier on, my fingers accidentally touched the soup bowl and was scalded. That's why my hands trembled. Shin Haru placed down her chopsticks, smiling calmly at her. Nuan, didn't you always sit here in the past? Auntie Shin purposely sat here because she wanted to chat with you during the meal. In her previous life, every time she ate at the Ji home, she would always sit far away from Ji Hongwen. Every time, she would cause Ji Hongwen to be unhappy, and he would scold her incessantly. The relationship between father and daughter became more and more precarious. It's fine for me to sit here. I can chat with my dad. Ji Nuan turned to see a helper bring the white wine that Ji Hongwen often drank over. She immediately reached out to press down on the bottle. Dad, when my mom was alive, she said that your stomach isn't good. It's fine if you drink a few cups when you have to socialize, but you can't drink every meal at home. As Ji Nuan spoke, she turned to the helper behind her. Auntie Chin, take this wine away. In the future, if my dad wants to drink at home, you have to repeat what my mom said to him back then. All right. Auntie Chin rushed over to take the wine away. Although Ji Hongwen wanted to drink this wine, this last Ji Nuan had never cared so much about him. He smacked his lips. I've only had this little hobby of drinking my entire life. You even have to care about this. Aren't you clear about your own body? With your constitution, you can clearly live to 100 years old. Do you really think you'll be happy just because of a few mouthfuls of wine? Ji Nuan raised her brows. Why do you still need to eat medicine to strengthen your body? I think if you drink a few more mouthfuls of wine, you'll have everything. All right. You're either immature, or once you do, you're really naggy. Ji Hongwen helplessly waved his hands, indicating for Auntie Chin, who did not know whether to leave or stay, to take the wine away. Shin Haru, who was unable to interrupt, suddenly smiled. Nuan, ever since you came back, you've really changed a lot. Ji Nuan glanced at her indifferently. Auntie Shin, you've misunderstood. You've been married to my dad for more than 10 years. Not only do you not care about his drinking habit, your Shin family's relatives often come here to bring him wine. You intentionally make my dad's stomach? Nuan, you're mistaken. You know how stubborn your dad is. You and you I and you. She. Hera. G. Shin, I'm not right. G and she. G, not. Ji Nuan coldly curved her lips. Oh, you don't advise him to drink less, but advise him to take more medicine? I remember that Auntie Shin's family is a medical family. You should know that taking medicine is not good for your health. Shin. This Ji Nuan was indeed strange. In the past, even if Ji Nuan did not like her stepmother, she was too lazy to care about Ji Hongwen's matters. She was always alone at home and would not use such words against her. Let's eat. Hurry and eat. Nuan, don't argue with your Auntie Shin the moment you come back. Ji Hongwen stared at the table without a single bottle of wine. He resisted the urge to call Auntie Chin back and picked up his chopsticks. In the past, when Ji Nuan was in the Ji family, he and Ji Nuan were the ones who started the conflict. Usually, Ji Nuan did not even look Shin Haru in the eye. Ji-won suddenly picked on Shin-haru. As the head of the family, Ji Hongwon could not stand the women's roundabout bickering. Shin-haru smiled. That's right. Won-won's words are full of sarcasm. I'm really not used to it. She's always been so direct with her words. I'm already used to it. Dad, I'm reminding Auntie Shin to take care of your health. How is this bickering? Aren't I doing this for your own good? Ji-won looked at him with a sincere expression. You're unhappy with just a few words of concern? Ji Hongwon's lips trembled. All right, the problem lies with me. In the future, I'll just drink less. Seeing this father and daughter pair up one after another, Shin-haru was so angry that she clenched her fists under the table. Originally, she had wanted to use this opportunity to have Ji Hongwon lecture Ji-won a few more times. However, this Ji-won was becoming more and more unfathomable. Her words were always able to bypass the real conflict. In the end, it was actually Ji Hongwon who put down his pride and gave in to his own daughter. Old Ji-won isn't wrong. You should take good care of your body. For something like alcohol, you should drink as little as possible. Shin-haru's expression, which had been on the verge of losing control of her anger, suddenly changed into a smile and said gently. Ji-won glanced at her with a smile that did not reach her eyes. This Shin-haru was someone who could endure. That's right. She had endured for more than 10 years in the Ji family. Wasn't her ultimate goal to pocket all of the Ji family's money? The moment she thought of her father's final expression as he passed away in the hospital, Ji-won abruptly raised her leg under the table and kicked Shin-haru's calf harshly. Did she want to pretend to be calm and gloss over the matter of the medicine? She refused to let her stay calm. But Shin-haru was caught off guard. Her calf was in intense pain, and she could not help but cry out. What are you doing? Can't you just eat a meal in peace? You're already so old, yet you're wailing like a ghost at the dining table. Ji Hongwon's expression was ugly as he angrily spoke. Shin-haru did not expect Ji-won to do such a thing to her. She said aggrievedly, earlier on, Ji-won seemed to have kicked me under the table. I'm not sure if it was on purpose, but it was too painful, so, when did I kick you? Ji-won's gaze was innocent. She then glanced at Ji Hongwon, whose eyes were filled with anger. Dad, I didn't. You clearly kicked him. You're already 20 years old, yet you're still doing such childish things. Everyone sitting here, how could I possibly accuse you? No matter how much Shin-haru endured, the pain on her calf was almost unbearable. Furthermore, Ji-won had clearly done it on purpose. She had kicked the most obvious part of her calf. Ji Hongwon glanced down and saw that Ji-won's leg was properly placed in front of her chair. Furthermore, Ji-won was wearing a long dress that covered her feet. The skirt was very long, and there was not the slightest bit of crease. It was impossible to tell if she was wearing high heels or something else. However, it did not seem like she had made such a big movement earlier. All of you, eat quietly. You're not young anymore. Don't act like a child, Ji Hongwon said impatiently. His gaze swept past Shin-haru's face unhappily. Shin-haru was so angry that her face was slightly twisted. The calmness she had maintained and the little bit of face she had regained was instantly gone. Her grip on her chopsticks tightened. Ji-won calmly drank the soup that Auntie Chin had brought for her. Chapter 28. Ji Mengran watched the scene in front of her and did not speak. She slowly ate her food, but her gaze would occasionally land on Ji-won. It seemed like she had to change her strategy in the future. Brainwashing Ji-won to stay away from Mo Jingshan and then think of ways to divorce him would most likely not work. Dad, drinking more soup is good for the body. Ji-won personally scooped a bowl of soup for Ji Hongwon and placed it in front of him. Ji Hongwon saw that Ji-won had really changed a lot and felt comforted in his heart. This child was so full of ideas now. Could it be that she really had some plans for buying Han Tianyuan's 2 companies? Everyone had their own thoughts during this meal. After the meal, Ji-won was about to call the U-Garden when Ji Hongwon called her to the study. Speak, what's going on with those 2 companies? You're my, Ji Hongwon's, daughter. If you make a fool out of yourself, you'll be throwing my face. Before Ji-won returned to the Ji home in the afternoon, she had specially printed out 2 documents. She took out the documents from her bag and placed them on the table. Dad, you have no way of predicting how the domestic property market and technology will develop in the next 10 years. Just looking at the real estate industry, the price of land and housing has been gradually rising since 3 years ago, and this trend will not stop. Right now, haven't the average prices of many properties dropped by a few percent? Many experts predict that the real estate industry will soon become a bubble. They will lose as much as they invest. Don't blindly believe those so-called experts. Look at the data I gave you first. It won't be too late to give me an answer after. Ji Hongwon looked at the stack of documents and then glanced at her. You've really made preparations. This is your daughter's first battle in the business world. Of course, I have to make thorough preparations and plans. I have to do this and I will do it. I promise I won't throw your face. Ji Hongwon looked at it for a while longer before he chuckled and said, All right, you have your father's boldness in the past, but how can you be sure that the economic trend for the next 10 years will be realized according to your budget and plan? If you miscalculate, have you thought about the consequences? Jinwon lowered her eyes and smiled mildly. All kinds of changes and business opportunities in the world in the next 10 years were in her mind. Taking advantage of the current stable capital and good connections in all aspects, the first thing she did was, of course, to firmly grasp the opportunity of the real estate industry in the next 10 years. Originally, she had never found an opportunity to start. That day, when she was at Han Tianyuan's place, she had coincidentally thought of his 2 companies that were about to be sold. Not only could he make him suffer in silence, but he could also push for the benefits he wanted. It could be considered as killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Since she was standing here, there must be a way to convince him. 2 hours later, walking out of the study, Jinwon glanced at the time. Dad, it's getting late. I'll head back first. Ji Hongwon had already read the documents she handed to him and listened to her orderly summary. After that, he did not make a formal statement, but he did not reject her plan. It was obvious that his heart was wavering. Don't go. Stay at home tonight. In the study, Ji Hongwon said, Since you've just recovered from the cold 2 days ago, I'll have Jingshin pick you up tomorrow. As he spoke, he immediately called Mo Jingshin. Jinwon swallowed the words that were at the tip of her tongue. Since her father had already said so, if she did not let Mo Jingshin pick her up, he would most likely think too much and suspect that she was purposely coaxing him when she said she planned to live a good life. Several minutes later, Ji Hongwon walked out. I've already told Jingshin. Tonight, you'll stay at the Ji home. He'll come pick you up tomorrow morning. Come early? Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. You're afraid of delaying his work, right? You brat, you've just gotten closer to Jingshin, and you're already siding with him. Jinwon's lips twitched. Were her current thoughts so obvious? Have you become muddle-headed? Tomorrow is the weekend. I think your heart has long flown back to the Yew Garden. What exactly did Mo Jingshin do to make you suddenly so willing? Jinwon's face heated up slightly. Dad, seeing her blush, the boulder in Ji Hongwon's heart finally fell. This time, she was truly sincere. It could be said that his heart was filled with comfort. If she had really caused his favorite son-in-law to disappear, and if they really divorced, who knew which girl would end up taking advantage of him in the future? Just thinking about it made his heart ache. Regarding Han Tianyuan's 2 companies, I can give you a chance to test the waters, but I have a condition. What condition? Within half a year, if you're unable to earn back this investment with interest, then you'll have to obediently continue learning financial management. The meaning behind his words was that if Jinwon was unable to earn back this money with her own abilities, she could only obediently guard the family's company. He would not give her any chance to start her own business. Ji Hongwon's personality had always been stubborn. For him to relent this time was actually not easy. Jinwon was silent for a moment before nodding. All right. At night, Jinwon was in her room. She laid on the bed, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. Half a year, 30 million yuan. Earning back the investment with interest was actually not as easy as it was made out to be. 10 years ago today, there was a period of stagnation in the country's real estate industry. There was even a slight drop. Although it did not drop by much, it continued to rise crazily in the next few years. However, right now, she was stuck at a time when the transaction rate was very low. Thus, the deadline of half a year was a huge test for her. She really could not sleep. Jean-Wan turned back to look at the time. It was already past 9 in the evening. Was Mo Jingshan at the Yew Garden or at the company? After being reborn, she had never been apart from him for a single night. Jean-Wan tossed and turned for a moment. In the end, she laid on the bed and picked up her phone to give him a call. However, her fingers paused on the screen. Mo Corporation had many overseas collaborations. He often held international video conferences with his overseas partners at this time of the night. If she called him now and he happened to be busy, wouldn't that be bad? After thinking for a moment, Jean-Wan decided to just send him a message. However, it seemed like Mo Jingshan rarely looked at messages. Tiske, who cared if he looked at it or not? Anyway, she could not sleep. Sending a message was just a way to resolve her lovesickness. Her fingers poked on the screen for a long time. Dear hubby, I miss you so much. I miss you so much. I miss you so much. I miss you so much? She thought for a long time before typing the words, Dear good hubby. She smiled with a red face as she poked the words on the screen. After sending it, Jean-Wan could not help but laugh. She turned to lie on the bed and looked at the message that had already been sent. She laughed out loud. Who said that only Mo Jingshan could flirt with her? She could clearly flirt with him as well. A few minutes after the message was sent, Jean-Wan got up to take a shower. All of a sudden, the phone on the bed rang. She turned to look, and her heart instantly palpitated. Chapter 29. Jean-Wan rushed back to the bed, grabbing her phone to pick up the call. Can't sleep? Mo Jingshan's voice came from the phone. Under the bright night sky, his voice was strangely alluring. The moment Jean-Wan heard his voice, her entire body softened as she lay on the bed. She held a pillow in her hand. Did you see the message I sent? It's already so late. Have you returned to the Yew Garden? No. Something happened with the overseas business partner. I just finished a meeting. Mo Jingshan's voice was low. Then you should go back and rest early. You're working late again when I'm not home, aren't you? Jean-Wan could not help but mutter, I should be by your side every day. When it's time, I should take off your clothes and press you down on the bed. I won't let you go anywhere. Don't mention work, you can't even enter the study. The other side was silent for a moment. Then he chuckled softly and slowly. When do you plan to take off my clothes? I'm talking to you about serious matters. I'm asking you to sleep early. Mo Jingshan chuckled. But I'm more looking forward to you personally taking off my clothes before sleeping with me. Jean-Wan buried her face into the pillow, listening to the movements on the other end. She sighed inwardly. She was clearly the one who took the initiative to flirt with Mo Jingshan. Why did it seem like he was flirting with her instead? He seemed to have already left the company. She could vaguely hear movements on the other side. He was most likely in the company's underground parking lot. Jean-Wan could not bear to hang up, nor did she want to disturb his driving. She lay on the bed, narrowing her eyes to say, Put on your headphones before driving. There's no need to talk to me. You have to be careful when driving at night. Want to sleep? He asked. No, I can't sleep. Perhaps it's because I haven't returned to the G home for too long that I suddenly have insomnia. Jean-Wan lay on the bed lazily. It's really strange. The bed at home is clearly no different from the bed in the Yew Garden. Why is it that I can't sleep lying on it? It's probably because the bed lacks me. Jean-Wan smiled, her eyes curved. She reached out to pull the large, white bear that she used to carry into her arms. She was quiet for a moment without speaking. After such a long silence, she did not know if he had already arrived at the Yew Garden, but the two did not hang up. She said lazily, It seems like I can only let Mr. Bear carry me to sleep tonight. Mo Jingshan directly asked, What Mr. Bear? That's right. Other than you, the legal husband, the only one who has the right to climb into my bed is Mr. Bear. Jean-Wan said as she pinched the big white bear in her arms. She then took a look at the time and smiled. All right, you drive. I won't disturb you anymore. See you tomorrow. With that, Jean-Wan was about to hang up. but she really couldn't bear to. She thought that she should wait until he hung up before hanging up, so she quietly pressed the phone to her ear. However, after listening for a long time, Mo Jingshin did not seem to have hung up. Was he waiting for her to hang up? Jinwan smiled and was about to move the phone away from her ear when she suddenly heard Mo Jingshin's low voice. "Come out, open the door." Jinwan pondered for a long time before jumping up from the bed. She turned and rushed to the window to look outside. Outside the Ji family's front yard, there were white car lights flashing by. In the darkness, she could vaguely tell that the car belonged to Mo Jingshin. Jinwan was shocked. "That car is yours? You're here?" "Mrs. Mo, my clothes have already been prepared. You're welcome to take them off whenever you want." Mo Jingshin's voice was light and carried a hint of a smile. Before Jinwan could return to her senses, he had already hung up. Jinwan was stunned. So Mo Jingshin really came? The Mo Corporation was not far from the Ji family home. How did he arrive so quickly? He actually directly came over tonight? In the Ji family's front yard, the moment the housekeeper and helpers saw that it was Mo Jingshin's car, they rushed to open the door to welcome him. At this time, no one in the family had slept yet. Ji Hongwen heard the news and immediately went downstairs. Even Shinharu and Ji Mengran were alarmed when they heard that Mo Jingshin had come to the Ji family home. Only Jinwan finally realized what was going on. She stared at the darkened phone screen for a long time before she finally managed to react. She rushed to run out. "Brother Jingshin." Ji Mengran had just showered. She wore a thin pink negligee and walked over to welcome him. "Why didn't you say hello before coming to the Ji family home?" After Mo Jingshin entered, Ji Mengran directly stood in front of him, blocking his view of others. Mo Jingshin coldly glanced at her and ignored her. He turned to look at Ji Hongwen, who had already walked over, politely greeting him, "Dad. Why did you come at this time?" Ji Hongwen clearly did not expect Mo Jingshin to come to the Ji family home so late. "You didn't return to the Yu Garden? Did you come directly from the company?" Mo Jingshin directly walked in, his gaze deep and quiet. "The company is not far from here. Jinwan is here, so I came directly on the way." "Yeah? Nwan only returned to the Ji family for a night." "Mo, you can't bear to part with her?" Shinharu interrupted, her tone slightly strange. She really could not understand where Jinwan, that little brat, got her fortune from. Not only was she able to successfully marry someone like Mo Jingshin, she was even cared for so much by him. After seeking death and asking for a divorce for more than half a year, she was still Mo Jingshin's wife. The moment Jinwan came downstairs, she heard Shinharu's unkind tone. As expected, this woman would put on a different face in front of her when she was not around. "Since you're here, you should rest first. Annie-chin, go call Jinwan down." Ji Hongwen was currently in a good mood. Both his daughter and son-in-law were here. It was truly a rare sight. Auntie Chin nodded. She was about to head upstairs when she saw that Jinwan had already come down. "Eldest miss, Mr. Mo is here." Auntie Chin smiled at her. "I know earlier on, we were on the phone." Jinwan did not hide anything. She headed downstairs and headed over. The first person she saw was Mo Jingshin wearing a black trench coat over his well-fitted suit. This man, how could he be so handsome? Even a simple trench coat could look so good on her. Before she could meet his gaze, she heard Ji Mingran's voice forcefully interject. "Brother Jingshin, it must be very cold outside tonight, right? It's already been many days since autumn. Did my sister's cold spread to you? Don't just focus on work. You have to take care of yourself." Mo Jingshin coldly and indifferently made an N sound. From start to finish, his gaze did not land on Ji Mengran. Instead, it moved past Ji Mengran, who was blocking his way, to look at Jinwan, who was walking over. His brows were handsome as he stood there, calmly looking at her. However, his gaze was only focused on her. Chapter 30. Why did you suddenly come? You scared me. Jinwan walked forward, circling around Ji Mengran to stand by his side. Mo Jingshin held her hand, lowering his eyes to look at her. Your hands are so cold? It's a little cold tonight. Earlier, I forgot to turn on the air conditioner. It's good that you're here to help me warm my hands. Jinwan smiled as she spoke. In the blink of an eye, she looked like a spoiled wife. Brother Jingshin, tonight? Ji Mengran was still excited that Emo Jingshin would come to the Ji home. No matter how they ignored her, she still wanted to speak to him. Ji Hongwen suddenly coughed, clearing his throat heavily. His expression was ugly. Mengran, look at what you're wearing. Jingshin is your brother-in-law. Why did you come down wearing so little? At this moment, everyone noticed that Ji Mengran was wearing a negligee with straps. It was a style that was close to those sexy pajamas. It was thin and short, revealing a large portion of her shoulder and collarbone. Even her chest was faintly discernible. The lower half of the skirt could barely cover a small portion of her thighs. It could not be any shorter. Earlier, his attention was focused on Emo Jingshin. Now that he had clearly seen what Ji Mengran was wearing, Ji Hongwen's expression was as black as the bottom of a pot. Dad, I was preparing to sleep earlier. When I heard that Brother Jingshin came, I immediately ran out. Ji Mengran was trying to explain when a thin coat was suddenly thrown over her head. She tugged the coat off her head, turning around to look at Jinwan. She realized that this was the coat Jinwan had worn when she came downstairs. Put it on. You might not be cold, but we all feel cold just by looking at it. Jinwan's tone was calm. Thank you, sister. Ji Mengran could not find anything else to talk about. Her eyes secretly glanced at Emo Jingshin. She saw that his gaze did not land on her body. Not to mention her legs, he did not even glance at her shoulders. Aya, it's so cold. Jinwan suddenly shivered. I didn't expect it to be so cold after taking off the coat. Dad, it's getting late. You guys should go back to sleep. Jingshen and I are going back to our room. Brother-in-law has just arrived. Sister, you're already dragging him back to our room? Ji Mengran muttered. Ji Hongwen glanced at Ji Mengran. So much? Hurry up and get dressed. Seeing that everyone was standing there, Auntie Chin took the initiative to say, why don't I go to the kitchen and cook a few bowls of supper? The weather has been really cold recently, so it's good to eat something warm before going to bed. Yes, Aunt Chin, hurry up and cook. Ji Mengran turned around and raised her hand in agreement. You guys go ahead. I've eaten too much tonight. I'm not hungry right now. Jingshin has also been busy at the company all day. It's already so late, so I won't be eating supper with everyone. Jinwan's expression was calm as she held onto Emo Jingshin's hand. She did not give Ji Mengran any chance to approach. All right, go back to your rooms. Sister Chin, you don't have to do anything, Ji Hongwen said sternly. When Auntie Chin heard this, she stopped walking towards the kitchen. Ji Mengran finally managed to see Emo Jingshin. She wanted to find an opportunity to speak with him. But right now, they didn't even have the chance to sit together and look at him, let alone talk to him alone. Jinwan looked at her with a faint glimmer in her eyes. Running downstairs dressed like that, with his father's old-fashioned personality, it was impossible for him not to be angry. My dear sister, you are too eager for quick success. You'll be easily exposed like this. Ji Mengran turned around unwillingly, only to see that Jinwan was already speaking softly to Emo Jingshin. The two of them were actually whispering in each other's ears in front of so many people. They really did not know shame. Emo Jingshin was usually such a high and mighty person, but he actually spoiled Jinwan so much. The more Ji Mengran watched, the angrier she became. But right now, she could not say or do anything. In the past, whenever Jinwan returned home, she would argue with her father. Her father would always use his docile and obedient personality to compare with Jinwan's willfulness and ignorance. Jinwan would then angrily slam the door and leave. She would not show any face at all in the Ji family. Her father would also be angered to the point of wanting to chase Jinwan out of the house. But now, could it be that the wheel of fortune had turned? Jinwan had become a caring little cotton-padded jacket. She had only come downstairs to see Emo Jingshin in her nightgown, but she was actually lectured in front of so many people. Which expert had taught Jinwan exactly? Everyone could clearly see Jinwan's proud and arrogant personality, but none of them hated her? Shenharu saw that Jinwan and Mo Jingshan had already gone upstairs and decided to speak softly by the side. Nuan, this child is still so immature. Jingshan came to the Ji family in the middle of the night. We should at least give him time to talk to the elders. She's still immature and has implicated Jingshan to the point where he seems to have no respect for his elders. Andy Shin is right. Dad, what I meant earlier was that elder sister has gone overboard. Ji Mengran softly harumphed. Ji Hongwen's gaze was sharp as he looked at them. Are you done yet? Can't you see what time it is now? What words must be said so late at night? Shenharu saw that he was angry and immediately softened her expression. She did not say anything more. This little hussy Jinwan seemed to be getting more and more difficult to deal with. Ji Hongwen was also on Jinwan's side, so it was better for her to speak less for now. Dad, shut up. Go back to your room. Ji Hongwen turned around, glaring at Ji Mengran even more harshly. Ji Mengran's expression changed. After being yelled at by her father, she trembled in fear and did not dare to speak anymore. She felt slightly wronged and raised her eyes to look upstairs. She bit her lips unwillingly and turned around to angrily rush back to her own room. The room door opened and closed. The light in the bedroom was gentle. Why did you suddenly come here? You didn't even tell me beforehand. Jinwan turned back to glare at the person who had caused the entire family to be dumbfounded. Didn't you say you missed me? The moment she turned back, Mo Jingshan suddenly lowered his head. Jinwan faltered slightly as she stared at the handsome face in front of her. The distance between the two was less than half a centimeter. This sudden closeness and the man's scent assaulted her senses, causing her heart to jump. Realizing that this was the Ji family home, even though the door was closed, Jinwan instinctively raised her hand to push him away. In the end, before she could push him away, she was held down by a strong arm and brought to the bedside. Mo Jingshan directly pulled her onto his lap, locking her in his arms by her waist. Earlier on the phone, didn't you say you wanted to take off my clothes? Right now, I'm right in front of you. What's wrong? You can't even raise your head? Jinwan pushed his arm away. The courage she used to tease him earlier had long disappeared to who knew which country. After pushing for a long time, he did not budge at all. She could not help but pat his arm, turning to speak to him with a hint of anger. Who asked you to come so suddenly? I wasn't mentally prepared at all. He chuckled softly by her ear. Are you sure you don't welcome me? Then I'll leave now and let you hug your Mr. Bear until daybreak? At the same time, Mo Jingshan's gaze shifted to the large, white bear that was slanted on the bed. His lips curved in a light smile. Chapter 31. Even though he did not move to leave, Jinwan still subconsciously grabbed his sleeve and pressed down on his arm, preventing him from leaving. Mo Jingshan wrapped his arms around her waist, his handsome face leaning closer. His thin lips were almost pressed against her cheek, and his breath was warm. Could it be that the person who sent me the message earlier wasn't you? Jinwan did not speak. Being held in his arms, she felt her entire body soften. She was so soft that she did not know what to say. She really did not want to break this warm silence. This made her feel at ease, like a fallen leaf returning to its roots. She did not speak. The man's voice was close by her ear, low and ambiguous. If you don't speak, I'll kiss you in? Jinwan was about to speak, but the moment she turned her head, she was abruptly kissed by the man who had lowered his head. The sudden kiss caused her entire body to instantly become docile. She obediently stayed in his arms without moving. This kind of sitting position was overly intimate, challenging all of her senses. His kiss deepened, and Jinwan slowly closed her eyes. Just as she was about to try to respond, she suddenly felt her hand being raised by him. She opened her eyes and felt him pressing her hand against his collar. When he kissed her, his gaze was silently provoking her. It was as though he was saying, "If you have the ability, come and take it off." Under his gaze, Jinwan was so shaken that even her bones were about to turn soft. She pressed her hand against his collar but did not move for a long time. He held her even more tightly in his arms, and they were inseparable. Their gentle lips and tongues continued to intertwine. Because her breathing was not smooth, she leaned into his embrace. Her hand also unconsciously gripped the collar of his shirt tightly. Her fingertips could feel the heat of his body through his clothes. In her previous life, this kind of ambiguous entanglement, this kind of immersion without any defenses, was unfamiliar yet exciting to her. She had never experienced this kind of trembling. When Jinwan's consciousness was in a daze, his hand reached into her clothes. His warm fingertips caressed her skin. It was as though they carried a prairie fire, burning her inch by inch. Jinwan's body abruptly trembled. She abruptly opened her eyes, only to see that the man's eyes were as deep as the bottom of the sea. During the day, she had been busy with the real estate data and documents. She had been in the housing management office and all kinds of smoke-filled information halls. At this moment, she still felt that she smelled bad. Remembering that she hadn't showered yet, she quickly pushed him again, but he easily pressed her down on the bed. Jinwan panted. Her clean and fair face hid her emotions and blush. This is the G home, not the U garden. Why don't we wait until we return to the U garden? From the start, Mo Jingshan did not plan on giving her a chance to retreat. He continued kissing her deeply, not stopping for even a moment. While she was unprepared, he almost took off half of her clothes. Wait, I haven't showered yet. Jinwan's hair was disheveled, and her cheeks were red. She could no longer control the frequency of her breathing. She struggled slightly. Let me take a shower. I'll be done immediately. I'll definitely be done soon. Because of her bashful and timid gaze, Mo Jingshan felt an undercurrent rush down his body. His black eyes seemed to be burning with fire, and he pressed her back into the soft blanket. The man's hoarse voice caused her heart to tighten. Who is the only one qualified to be on your bed? I'll give you a chance to say it again. The great Mo Corporation cell was actually bickering with a large, white bear to this extent. Jinwan tilted her head to avoid him. This bear has been on my bed for so many years. I can't even remember when I bought it. Compared to Mr. Bear, how many nights has Mr. Mo hugged me to sleep? Mo Jingshan's handsome brows rose. He lowered his head again. On your bed, for the next few decades, it will only be me. As he spoke, without waiting for Jinwan to react, his kiss landed on her ear. Her most sensitive spot was suddenly kissed by him. Jinwan felt as though her scalp was about to explode. Her mind went blank. Mo Jingshan, in any case, she did not really intend to be a tortoise. It was just that he came too suddenly, and she was not mentally prepared. She really was not prepared. Even now, her heart was still beating wildly. What did you call me? It was as though he was purposely not letting go of her most sensitive spot. His low and hoarse voice pressed against her ear as though he was threatening her. Jinwan pursed her lips. Her eyes were dark and filled with arousal. He even brushed his warm breath against her ear, causing her to tremble in his embrace. She could not even speak. What did you call me? His voice was dark and hoarse as he asked in a low voice. Jingshan? Jinwan could no longer think calmly. She could not even form a complete sentence. She could only subconsciously respond to his forceful question. This answer seemed to be unsatisfactory to him. His hand moved up her clothes. Jinwan's entire body instantly tightened. She looked up at him as though she had been electrocuted. However, she saw that the man's deep gaze was fixed on all her expressions. Under his gaze, her willpower, which wasn't very strong to begin with, gradually weakened. Even the matter of insisting on taking a shower was almost thrown to the back of her mind. Hubby, such a soft and velvety voice, to a man, was like a drug that stimulated everything. The scorching kiss moved from her ear to her snow-white neck, and then to her collarbone. Dotted and dotted, he gently kissed her. Bit by bit, still going down, all of a sudden, the tightly shut bedroom door was knocked. Both of their movements paused. Jinwan abruptly wanted to stand up but was pressed down by Mo Jingshan. He looked at her deeply, appearing completely unaffected as he continued to kiss her. Someone's knocking to you. The door was silent for a few seconds before sounds came again. Knock, knock, knock. Following that, Ji Mingran's soft voice sounded from outside the door. Big sister, are you asleep? I asked Auntie Chin to cook supper earlier, but she made too much. I can't eat so much, so I brought some out for you. Brother Jingshin has been busy all night. You shouldn't have eaten much, right? Open the door. I'll bring the supper in. Jinwan turned to look at the door. She wanted to get up, but Emo Jingshin did not let her go. After struggling for a while, her clothes became even more disheveled. Are you sure you want to open the door like this? Emo Jingshin lowered his head, smiling heavily at her shoulders that already had traces of ambiguity. Jinwan glared at him, lowering her voice. It's true that wherever you go, Ji Mengran will definitely be absent. Usually, I don't see her eat supper. Tonight she's actually so persistent. Not only does she want to eat, she even insists on bringing it over for you. Emo Jingshin abruptly kissed her lips harshly. What supper? Eating you is enough. Chapter 32. Ji Mengran was right outside the door. Jinwan really could not concentrate. If we don't send Ji Mengran away, she'll stand outside the door for the entire night, she softly protested. Emo Jingshin's hand rubbed her head, standing up to open the door. Ji Mengran was still knocking on the door, but as though she was afraid her father would hear her, she softly said, Are you guys asleep? Big sister, you usually don't sleep so early. Before she could finish speaking, the door in front of her was suddenly opened. The moment she saw it was Emo Jingshin, Ji Mengran's gaze paused on his unbuttoned shirt for 2 seconds. She then raised her eyes. Brother Jingshin, I'll bring the supper in for you. Emo Jingshin's tall figure blocked the door, his voice indifferent. Take it back. We're not eating. Seeing his indifference, Ji Mengran pursed her lips. But Brother Jingshin, you came so late from work. You definitely haven't. There's no need. She had yet to finish speaking when she heard a tongue. The door in front of Ji Mengran was slammed shut. Ji Mengran's eyes widened, staring in disbelief at the door that had been mercilessly slammed shut. Jinwan, who had just sat up from the bed with her messy clothes, did not expect the matter to be resolved so quickly. Although this was indeed Emo Jingshin's style, this was the Ji home. He still had to give the Ji family some face. But clearly he did not plan on giving Ji Mengran any face. Just as she was thinking, she raised her eyes to see Emo Jingshin walking back. The moment Jinwan saw his eyes that were as deep as the sea, she immediately jumped up from the bed. She grabbed the big white bear on the bed and threw it at him, turning to escape to the bathroom. I'm going to take a shower. Emo Jingshin caught the bear she threw. He then glanced at her fleeing back view and sighed with a smile. He threw the eyesore big white bear to the side. Ji Mengran wanted to knock on the door, but the room was too quiet. She raised her hand and put it down. Her fingers that were gripping the bowl were turning white from the force. A moment later, she gritted her teeth and returned to her own room. She threw the supper in her hands into the trash can and threw the bowl away as well. Jinwan lingered in the bathroom for half an hour before leaving with a towel wrapped around her. Walking out of the bathroom, she held a towel to dry her hair with one hand and pressed down on the towel wrapped around her chest with the other, subconsciously afraid that it would fall. As she walked, she glanced at the person by the bedside and saw that he was looking at an old photo album by her bedside. What are you looking at? She wiped her hair until it was no longer dripping and walked over. Emo Jingshin placed the album down. She lowered her eyes to see the photo of the family of 4 from more than 10 years ago. At that time, Shinharu had not interfered. At that time, the Ji family was happy and blissful. This is my mother. She glanced at her. Isn't she beautiful? Emo Jingshin's voice was low, but even so, his voice was pleasant and magnetic. From this photo, you don't look much like your sister since you were young. That's right. Although Meng Ran and I are blood-related sisters, we don't look alike at all. Jinwan curved her lips. It's not just that we don't look alike. I don't even look alike to my mother. If it weren't for the fact that Dad has always favored me the most, I would really suspect if I'm really their biological daughter. Emo Jingshin suddenly glanced at her. The moment she met his dark and deep eyes, Jinwan was affected by the faint hint of a smile on his face. She subconsciously lowered her head to look at the towel on her body. It did not seem like there was anything exposed. My hair isn't dry yet. I'll go dry it. She turned around. However, before she could take 2 steps, the man easily pulled her back and pushed her onto the bed. Ji-Wan reflexively wanted to get up, but Imo-Jingshin's hand was already on her waist. His left hand landed on the other side of the bed, trapping her under his body. His voice became increasingly deep and seductive. Did you think I would let you off again and again? Her long hair was slightly damp. It was thick and soft, spreading across the bed like seaweed. Because of his position, her cheeks became redder and redder. Her heart began to beat faster and faster. Ji-Wan moved her lips, wanting to speak. Imo-Jing, the man did not give her another chance to speak. He lowered his head and kissed her. Ji-Wan was just about to reach out to push his chest when her hands were pressed against the top of her head by him. This position. Ji-Wan's face exploded in red. Don't pull my towel. It was not easy for her to wrap herself up so tightly in the bathroom earlier. Don't touch there. Don't. Ji-Wan's face was so red that it was about to drip blood. She had never experienced this before. Usually, she was used to kissing, hugging, and even purposely teasing her sensitive spots. But to directly pull off her towel on the bed, this was... Furthermore, his hand was reaching into her towel from below. You didn't bring a change of clothes in and only came out wrapped in a towel. Wasn't it to make it easier for me to take it off? His voice was bewitching, causing Ji-Wan's little anticipation and shyness to be completely exposed. She admitted that she did not plan to escape tonight. However, this overflowing tide of passion had completely overturned her previous understanding. Right now, her mind was completely blank. Everything was based on her instincts. Ji-Wan felt that Imo-Jingshin was completely suppressing her. His scorching kiss caused her to be unable to think. When he whispered behind her ear, his breath was so hot that she couldn't help but shiver. Did the courage to threaten to take off my clothes get eaten by a bear? I drove at 200 kilometers per hour from the company to the G home, yet I still have to take it off myself? She had already said that no matter how close his company was to the G home, it was impossible for him to reach the G home so quickly. In the end, he actually drove at 200 kilometers per hour. The scorching tide of passion continued to engulf her. Ji-Wan was teased until she was about to cry. Don't touch there. You don't kiss. Her voice was delicate and soft to the point where she did not dare to believe that this tone came from her own mouth. She did not expect that this would cause the man who was already tensed up to lose control. He lowered his head and fiercely kissed her lips again. Ji-Wan was pressed down by him. Her lips and tongue were occupied by him. The towel on her body had long been thrown off the bed. She had never been so aroused before. Her body had never trembled from anxiety and anticipation like this. She was already naked, but the man on top of her was still fully dressed. Her hand was suddenly held by him. From the few buttons of his shirt, he held it and unbuttoned it one by one. He then held her hand and slid it down to his belt. Her hand pressed against the expensive and exquisite metal front of the belt. The cold and hard touch caused Ji-Wan's mind to go blank for several seconds. She only heard him coaxing softly, "Be good. Undo it." Chapter 33. Anyway, his shirt had already been unbuttoned. As for the belt, she would remove it as well. Since they had already reached this step, Ji-Wan gathered her courage and tried to undo it under his control. Perhaps it was because she had never done it before. After a long time, she did not succeed. She raised her head to look at him in defeat. "I can't undo it," Imo-Jingshin chuckled softly, holding her hand and placing it on a protrusion by the side of the metal buckle. His fingers pressed lightly, and a soft and pleasant sound could be heard. Hearing his low and husky chuckle as he leaned down to kiss her ear, she gripped the shirt he had yet to take off with both hands. Her voice was soft and hoarse. Gentler. Firstly, she was afraid it would hurt like the first time. Secondly, this was the G home. She was afraid that if she made a sound, it would be heard. Imo-Jingshin lowered his head, seeing her eyes that were about to overflow with tears. He kissed her lips. "Are you sure that you only felt pain that night?" Ji-Wan. That night when he was drugged, She had experienced it twice in both her previous and current lives. At the beginning, she was in so much pain that she wanted to die. She cried and begged him to let her go. But later on, she did not know when it started, but her crying voice gradually changed. It no longer sounded like her. But at that time, she was still in a daze. She did not even know that she had been reborn. How could she remember it so clearly? Did he have to make her remember? The man above her narrowed his eyes. Do you remember? Jean-Wan was completely unable to recall how she had changed that night. She turned her head and buried her face in the blankets, not wanting to answer his question. But the more she did not want to answer, the more he did not give up. Every kiss targeted her sensitive spots. Every place his palms touched was like a prairie fire, burning her into ashes. I don't know. You don't know? It's been so many days. I don't remember. You have to remember. Don't. This man. He drew out the desire she had buried deep in her heart, yet he did not satisfy her. He hung on to her, provoked her, kissed her, and teased her. He was clearly like an arrow on the bow, yet he refused to give it to her. Emo Jingshin, you remember? You don't kiss here, speak? I really don't remember. Emo Jingshin was not usually like this. Where was his aloofness? What about his abstinence? Why did he change after she recovered from her illness? He was as much of a jerk as he could get. She turned her head and buried her head in his neck. She said in a wrong tone, "You're too much," he chuckled. Am I too much? You've gone too far. We've been married for half a year, and I've let you go time and time again. Am I being too much? Jean-Wan buried her head in his neck and did not speak. Seeing that she had suddenly become obedient, Emo Jingshin was most likely very satisfied. His breathing was no longer as steady because of her breathing against his neck. It gradually became heavy and disorderly, but his voice was still languid and seductive. Be good, don't close your legs so tightly. Spread them apart. Right now, Jean-Wan didn't have the ability to think at all. She subconsciously moved her legs and did as she was told. Her obedient attitude would make any man feel hot when he saw it. Miss Meng Ran? Why aren't you asleep yet? Suddenly, there was the sound of a servant passing by outside the door, as well as the question in a low voice. Jean-Wan did not dare to believe that Ji Meng Ran had actually returned and was eavesdropping outside the door. Ji Meng Ran, who was hiding outside the door, no longer hid. She paced back and forth by the door. I can't sleep. I ate too much earlier and want to walk around to digest before going to sleep. The servant nodded and was about to leave with the things in her hands. However, Ji Meng Ran's sharp eyes caught the things in the servant's hands. She immediately raised her voice and shouted, "Why are you holding this thing? This is something that Brother Xing gave to my sister. Why is it here? Quickly take it away and destroy it. Don't let Brother Jingshin see it." The servant's entire body stiffened. She softly said, "Madam asked me to take this away. I was just about to put it away. Quickly hide it. If others find out about what happened between my sister and Brother Xing, it would be bad." How was Ji Meng Ran's voice telling the servant to hide it? She raised her voice and spoke loudly as though she wanted everyone inside to hear every single word. When Jean-Wan heard the words Brother Xing, her back instantly turned cold. A certain memory that she had purposely tried to forget caused all the blood in her body to freeze. Brother Xing has already been chased out for so many years. Back when my sister got married, not many people knew about what happened between her and Brother Xing. Quickly take this away. Quickly. Ji Meng Ran's voice came one after another, causing the servant to be slightly stunned. What was wrong with second miss? This was outside eldest miss and Mr. Mo's room. She was speaking so loudly, wasn't she afraid of waking them up? And that matter, the Ji family had not mentioned it for so many years. Second miss was really strange. Jean-Wan abruptly stood up. She grabbed the towel and wrapped it around her body, rushing off the bed. In the end, her entire body was weak from being teased, and her legs were soft and powerless. The moment her feet touched the ground, she suddenly fell forward due to the speed at which she got off the bed. Emo Jingshin's eyes and hands were quick to catch her, but he was too late. Jinwan's knee knocked heavily against the edge of the bedside table. The pain caused her to cry out softly. Ji Meng Ran, who was outside the door, heard Jinwan's suppressed movements. Her thoughts immediately went astray as she turned to stare at the tightly shut door. She was sure that they had heard what she had just said outside, and they had heard it very clearly. Even like this, Mo Jingshan did not suspect that something had happened between Jinwan and someone else? And they could still carry on like this? Could it be that other than that night, they had slept together recently? Second miss, let's go. Hurry and rest. It's already late. The servant heard the sound and also had her thoughts go astray. She held the things in her hands with a red face and rushed off. Ji Meng Ran's expression was ugly as she stood outside the door. She took a deep breath and turned to leave, afraid that she would hear any more intimate sounds. The moment Jinwan cried out in pain, Mo Jingshan bent down to carry her up, placing her on his lap. Seeing her reddened eyes, his handsome brows furrowed. "What's wrong with you?" As he spoke, his palm had already touched her knee. Seeing that her skin was only slightly red and not very serious, he finally relaxed. After the pain, Jinwan finally calmed down. She knew that Ji Meng Ran was trying to drive a wedge between them, although this method was useless and would only make Jinwan feel disgusted. "It's nothing." Jinwan lowered her head and touched her knee. She did not explain. Mo Jingshan looked at her, his gaze carrying a hint of sternness. Chapter 34. She sat in his embrace, her hand gripping his slightly open shirt. The moment her gaze landed on his chest that was still very warm, she tilted her head against his shoulder and used her hand to poke at his collar. Meng Ran said earlier. Before he could finish his sentence, the hand that was wantonly moving around his collar was caught by him and pressed down. Mo Jingshan rubbed her slightly damp head. "Marriage is based on trust. I won't ask, and you don't have to explain." Jinwan's heart trembled. She suddenly felt that everything was worth it. Jinwan's hair had yet to dry. Mo Jingshan's fingers moved through her hair and finally sighed softly. "Where's the hairdryer? Dry your hair." Was he finally going to let her blow-dry her hair? Jinwan blinked at him and pointed toward the white glass cabinet by the bathroom. "It's over there." Mo Jingshan placed her down and covered her naked body with the blanket. He then got up to help her get it. Jinwan grabbed the towel by the bed and shrunk under the blanket. She barely managed to wrap the towel around herself and rushed off the bed. She did not plan on letting him dry her hair again. If he continued to spoil her like this, she was afraid that in the future, she would not be able to take care of herself. "I'll do it myself." The moment she ran to his side, she reached out to snatch the hairdryer. Mo Jingshan was tall and had long legs. He lowered his eyes to glance at her and raised his hand. Jinwan could only stand on her tiptoes and try her best to reach up. After stretching for a long time, she still could not grab it. She glared at him. "Give it to me." She jumped up as she spoke. After jumping twice, she noticed the meaningful smile in the man's eyes. Jinwan subconsciously rushed to press down the towel that almost fell from her chest. "Mo Jingshan, when you're not being serious, you're really too annoying." She could not help but mutter under his slightly amused gaze. She rolled her eyes at him and turned to leave. Her waist was abruptly pulled back by him. He then pressed her down on the single-seater sofa by the bathroom. "I'm only being serious to you, and you're feeling wronged?" Jinwan harumphed but did not move. Who asked him to be so tall? In front of him, her 165 centimeters tall figure was completely dwarfed. He was clearly using his height to bully her. The sound of the hairdryer rang in her ears. His actions were natural and considerate as he helped her dry her hair. Not only did the appearance of a grown man holding a hairdryer not feel out of place, but it was also so beautiful and elegant that it made people wonder where this man was an elegant god that had descended from. The creator was really amazing. He could put all the perfection on one person. "If you continue to spoil me like this, you'll turn me from a little wild dog on the grassland into a spoiled little Pekingese." Jinwan closed her eyes and snorted angrily, but she appeared a little innocent. "Don't move." The man's voice was low and soft. Ji gently. Ji tilted her head and glanced at him, but he pushed her head back. Sit properly. Don't move. She raised her eyebrows, listened to the sound of the wind, and casually asked, Do you have no intention of going back to inherit the Mo family's company? I heard that the Shine Group's headquarters has been moved to America. He did not pause. It was as though he would casually reply to her question. His tone was normal. Shine Group still has grandfather and the Mo family's elders and uncles. She raised her hand to play with a strand of hair hanging in front of her chest. But I remember that grandfather Mo doesn't seem to have any intentions of leaving the company to them. Instead, he wants you to go back. Mo Jingshan did not speak but turned off the hairdryer. He rubbed her hair gently. One Mo corporation is enough to support you. Support her? Supporting her was actually very costly. Although she was very restrained now and did not buy various luxuries to fill her boring life like before. Furthermore, in this lifetime, she did not intend to be supported by anyone. Mo Jingshan had already placed the hairdryer back. Ji stood up and used her fingers to comb her hair. She glanced back to see that his shirt was still half unbuttoned. Earlier on, she did not notice that the great CEO Mo had actually helped her dry her hair in such a disheveled manner. But even though his clothes were disheveled, this appearance of his made him appear lazy and seductive, causing one to be unable to shift their gaze away. There was not the slightest hint of a hooligan's aura. Instead, it was so good-looking that it made one's hair stand up. In the past, she rarely had the opportunity to speak so much with Mo Jingshan. It could be said that before they got married, she did not understand him well enough. Aside from his family background, his appearance, the fact that he did not have any women before marriage, and the fact that he doted on her after marriage, she actually knew nothing about him. Ant's words last time weren't wrong. There are so many women who like you, and there are many rich and famous young ladies who are worthy of you. What exactly do you see in me? Ji supported herself with one hand on the sofa, watching as he slowly rolled up his sleeves. Even a casual movement was so good-looking. Mo Jingshan raised his eyes to look at her. His lips curved slightly. Come here. Although she asked this, she still stood up and walked over. The two of them were only separated by a small sofa. It was only 2 steps. She had just approached him and met his dark and calm eyes when the man suddenly reached out and pulled her into his embrace. He lowered his head and kissed her. The light in the bedroom was so bright that she could not open her eyes. She leaned against his embrace and was kissed by him for a long time. Thinking back to what they had almost done on the bed earlier, she did not even know where to place her hands. After the kiss ended, Mo Jingshan's eyes darkened as he watched her. I'm going to shower. Let's shower together, then? The bathroom in my room is so small. It's not as big as the one in the U garden. 2 people won't be able to shower. Besides, I just showered. Mo Jingshan did not give her any chance to refuse. He opened the bathroom door and brought her in. Mo Jingshan, the soundproofing in my bathroom isn't very good, don't. In the next second, she was abruptly lifted up. Ji softly cried out but hurriedly suppressed the sound that was about to escape her lips. Her entire body was carried onto the marble counter in the bathroom. Her messy hair contrasted against her snow-white skin. She placed her hands on his shoulders and did not dare to let go, afraid that she would fall. Her expression was one of shock. What are you doing? Testing the soundproofing. He pushed her against the wall behind the marble counter. Her back was pressed against the wall. Ji watched him. She took a deep breath. Put me down. Before she could finish her words, the man held the back of her head with one hand, forcing her to lower her head and press his lips against hers. He sucked on her lips, the tip of his tongue tracing the shape of her lips. He kissed her until her entire body was soft and soft. He pried open her teeth, forcefully entering her mouth and attacking her territory. The man's breath landed on her neck. His low and heavy voice declared, "Don't even think about sleeping tonight." Chapter 35. The next day, the sky had just brightened when Ji was woken up by a knock on the door. She furrowed her brows and tried to turn around, but she could not. Her entire body was held in Mo Jingshan's embrace. Thinking back to last night, not only was there no shyness on her face, but she was so angry that she wanted to pinch him a few times. He said that she wouldn't be able to sleep tonight, and she really didn't sleep at all. Mo Jingshan, this man, was too vengeful. Just because of Ji Mingran's words last night, when the two of them were being intimate, she had suddenly pushed him away. He bore a grudge against her. After that, he brought her into the bathroom and kissed her until she was limp. Then, he touched her until she was unable to extricate herself. She was so aroused by him that she almost begged him to fulfill her wish. In the end, he acted as if nothing had happened. He washed her up, carried her out, threw her onto the bed, and hugged her to sleep. He did nothing else. It caused her body to heat up for a long time, and being hugged by him made the heat even more unbearable. No matter how she struggled in his arms, he ignored her and didn't allow her to move. His whole body was on fire, and he had nowhere to put it out. This was worse than being drugged. Jinwan's face was filled with anger. Because of the urgent knocking on the door, she could not stay still in his arms. She tried to sit up but was pressed back down by him. The man did not open his eyes. His handsome face was drowsy and lazy. When she was about to get up angrily, he hugged her and said hoarsely, "It's only 5:30. Would a normal person knock on the door at this time?" Jinwan knew it. Who was it that came to disturb her sleep so early in the morning? Thinking about it this way, he could guess who it was. What a lingering ghost. So Ji Mengran didn't sleep at all last night. Jinwan's mind became slightly clearer. She curled up in his embrace, but because of the torment from last night, she bit down on his chest. Mo Jingshan grunted. He furrowed his brows and tightened his grip on her. "Behave yourself. Don't move." His voice was even more hoarse. She didn't believe that he didn't feel the slightest bit of discomfort when she had been so miserable last night. If they were not in the Ji home, she would have pressed him down on the bed and raped him. The door was knocked even louder. Ji Mengran called out from outside, "Sister, wake up. The sun is especially bright today. Let's go for a morning jog." Ji Mengran had never been so diligent before and had never taken the initiative to go for a morning jog. She couldn't sleep, so why didn't she consider if others were sleepy? Jinwan abruptly sat up. Her movement was too sudden, and Mo Jingshan was caught off guard. He opened his eyes. His voice was calm and low. "Looks like it's better if you don't come back to the Ji family in the future." Jinwan glanced at the door. Even if she did not have a temper when she woke up, she was so annoyed by Ji Mengran that she wished she could smash the door on her face. "Sister, are you awake?" Mingran's probing voice sounded from outside the door again. Jinwan decided to lie on the bed and pretend she did not hear anything. She refused to believe that Ji Mingran's skin would be so thick that she would ignore the feelings of the rest of the family and continue knocking. As expected, the door was knocked again. Ji Mengran could not hear anything. Even if she guessed that she had been ignored, she could not continue knocking because her father and Auntie Shen had been woken up. "What are you doing? It's so early in the morning. Don't you know that everyone is resting?" Ji Hongwen furrowed his brows. He walked down from the bedroom on the third floor. The moment he saw Ji Mengran, his expression turned cold. Ji Mengran rushed to take a step back, cautiously whispering, "Dad, didn't my sister just catch a cold a few days ago? I want to go for a morning jog with her to train. Why don't I see you waking up so early? Don't you know that your brother-in-law slept here last night? What's with the ruckus?" Ji Hongwen scolded. At this moment, he was no longer sleepy. He warned her again and directly turned to go downstairs. The room finally regained its silence. Jinwan was extremely sleepy and gradually relaxed. She rubbed her head against Mo Jingshan's chest and found a comfortable position to continue sleeping. At around 7 o'clock, Jinwan walked down the stairs feeling refreshed. Seeing the people downstairs, she smiled and turned back to call out, "Jingshan, I forgot to bring my phone. Help me get it." Ji Mengran was sitting by the dining table. She was just about to find a few words to scold Jinwan for waking up so late when she heard her words. Not only did she not see Mo Jingshan's figure, but after Jinwan said those words, she heard his steady footsteps return from the staircase. It was clear that he was going to retrieve Jinwan's phone. This Jinwan, She actually dared to order Mo Jingshan around. Who did she think she was? In less than a minute, Mo Jingshan returned downstairs. Jin Wan was still waiting on the stairs. She received the phone from him and blinked at him. "Thank you, hubby." Mo Jingshan's clear, black eyes met her gaze. He calmly curved his lips. "Go eat breakfast. Dad is already waiting." Ji Hongwen watched as the two of them walked down one after another. One was fresh, beautiful, and generous, while the other was cold and handsome, causing one to be unable to shift their eyes away. Ji Hongwen did not seem to mind that they had woken up late. Instead, he smiled and had Auntie Qin bring over the prepared breakfast. "Dad, good morning." Jin Wan walked to the seat closest to Ji Hongwen energetically. Shen Haru saw that she had gone to that seat and her gaze was slightly unhappy. She was just about to open her mouth to mock her when she saw Mo Jingshan also walking over. Due to his aura and status, she thought for a moment and decided not to speak. "Alright, how was your sleep?" Ji Hongwen glanced at Jin Wan in a good mood before turning to Mo Jingshan. "This is the first time you've returned to the Ji home after getting married. If there's anything you're not used to, you must tell me." Mo Jingshan nodded at him calmly and politely. "It's not bad. The soundproofing in the bedroom is very good. I couldn't hear anything and had a good night's sleep." Soundproofing? Jin Wan glanced at him. This man was really black-bellied. Last night, he had already bullied her to such an extent. These words were clearly meant to mock her. She glared at him darkly. Mo Jingshan only chuckled softly. Ji Mengran sat opposite the two of them, raising her eyes to look at Mo Jingshan. Because in the Ji family, Mo Jingshan's brows were not as cold and indifferent as they usually were. Although he was still somewhat indifferent, he had given Jin Wan enough face and was no longer as cold and distant as he used to be. His body carried the freshness of the morning. It was really good looking. However, his hands were attentively pulling out the chair for Jin Wan. He did not even glance at the people around them. Chapter 36. During breakfast, because Mo Jingshan was present, Ji Hongwen suddenly brought up the topic of Elder Mo's 80th birthday in a week. "Nuan, has it been a long time since you bought any new clothes?" Ji Hongwen suddenly asked. Ji Nuan was drinking her soup when she raised her head in surprise. "Weren't we talking about Grandfather Mo's birthday? Why did the topic suddenly shift to me? You've been used to being casual for so many years. Usually, you can dress however you want, but for Elder Mo's birthday, you have to dress more formally." Jin Wan wanted to say that it was not like she had no clothes to wear. Regardless of whether it was the Ji family or the Mo family's wardrobe, she had whatever she wanted. How formal did she have to be? "Jingshan, if you're not busy today, why don't you accompany Nuan to choose a few sets of clothes?" Ji Hongwen did not wait for her to speak, turning to look at Mo Jingshan. Mo Jingshan calmly smiled. "Alright, Dad, I don't lack clothes. Let Jingshan accompany you. Just obediently go and buy some for me." Ji Hongwen once again displayed his authority as the head of the family. He glared at her as though saying how immature she was. "After being married for so long, you've never officially returned to the Mo family. What are the rumors out there? Don't you have any idea in your heart?" Ji Hongwen harshly said, "Jingshan usually spoils you, but that doesn't mean you can always be so willful and impolite. The Mo family is not an ordinary family. How many people will be watching you during Elder Mo's birthday? You still have to act the way you should." Jin Wan did not retort. Buying clothes was not important. Shopping with Mo Jingshan was a fresh experience. At the same time, she could also think about what kind of birthday present to give Grandfather Mo. Since Mo Jingshan did not reject it, she naturally accepted it. "Dad, our Ji family will also be going to Elder Mo's birthday, right?" Ji Mengran suddenly asked. "Of course. As in-laws, how could we not go to Elder Mo's birthday?" "But Dad, I haven't bought any new clothes in a long time." Ji Mengran's tone carried a hint of grievance. "Can I follow big sister and brother Jingshan to buy clothes? Don't you spend money recklessly every day? What clothes do you need?" Ji Hongwen sternly shouted at her, "Don't mess around. The clothes I usually buy are for everyday wear. I don't have any clothes that are suitable for that kind of occasion. Anyway, my sister and the others are going shopping today, not going on a date. It won't hurt if they bring me along. Ji Hongwon was just about to reprimand him. Since Mengran is going to attend the birthday banquet, it's not wrong to let her choose a few sets of clothes. Shen Haru chimed in from the side. These two are your biological daughters. You can't be too biased, right? That's right. Dad, you're biased. Ji Mengran reached out and hugged Shen Haru's arm, acting coquettishly. You don't even love me as much as Auntie Shen. Since Mengran wants to go, let's go together. Ji Nuan smiled indifferently. Sis, you're the best. Ji Mengran winked at her. Ji Nuan lightly curved her lips. If she wants to follow, then let her follow. When the time comes, it's fine as long as she doesn't regret it. Nuan, you've really spoiled Mengran too much. Since young, you've always given in to her. Ji Hongwon saw that Ji Nuan did not object and did not continue scolding her. Ji Nuan's lips curved into a cold smile. After all, she's my dearest little sister. If I don't give in to her, who else can I give in to? After spoiling her for so many years and giving in to her biological sister for so many years, she still wanted to snatch her sister's husband away. Many years later, she would even single-handedly push her sister into the abyss of life, causing her to die tragically. Ji Mengran did not notice Ji Nuan's unfathomable smile. She only focused on Mo Jingshen's direction. Brother Jingshen, in a while, I'll quietly follow you and sister. I definitely won't disturb you. After sister is done shopping, I'll choose what I want to buy, all right? Mo Jingshen's cold brows moved slightly. His gaze lightly landed on her, but he did not reply. The smile in Ji Mengran's eyes froze. He was really too stingy to even say a single word to her. Shen Haru tugged on Ji Mengran's hand. Isn't it just going to buy clothes? Mengran, there's no need for you to make yourself feel so wronged. It's rare that you can go out with your sister and brother-in-law. Remember to buy the most expensive and best. Anyway, your brother-in-law's money can't even be used up in several lifetimes. Isn't that right, Nuan? As Shen Haru spoke, she glanced toward Ji Nuan. She was purposely making things difficult for Ji Nuan. However, Ji Nuan did not speak and only smiled. Her expression was as calm as Mo Jingshen, who was sitting beside her. Seeing that she was not the least bit angry, Shen Haru raised her brows. She did not say anything more. In any case, no matter what was said, Ji Nuan would not suddenly stand up and throw a tantrum. She would also not make Ji Hongwon unhappy. Right now, Ji Nuan knew when to advance and when to retreat. Who knew what she was planning in her heart? Ji Nuan appeared as though she did not care about the thoughts of everyone at the table. Not long after, she placed down her bowl and chopsticks. Hubby, shall we set off now? Are you full? Mo Jingshen asked. And you've put a lot into my bowl. If I eat any more, my stomach will burst. Mo Jingshen smiled mildly. He said to Ji Hongwon, we'll be leaving first. Enjoy your meal. Ji Hongwon nodded. Seeing his daughter and son-in-law being so loving, he truly felt comfortable from the bottom of his heart. Seeing that the two of them had already stood up, Ji Mengran was shocked. We're leaving now. I haven't finished eating. Who asked you to speak so much earlier? Eating so slowly. Ji Hongwon turned to glare at her. If you want to go, hurry up and follow us. Don't let Jing Shen and your sister wait for so long. Otherwise, don't follow us. Ji Mengran felt slightly wronged but did not speak further. She stood up and wiped her mouth. Seeing that Ji Nuan and Mo Jingshen had already left the villa, she hurriedly ran out. In the end, the moment she stepped out, she saw Ji Nuan actually taking the initiative to hold onto Mo Jingshen's arm. Ji Mengran paused for a moment before quickly walking forward. She smiled and said, Brother Jingshen, didn't you park your car in the villa's front yard? Why did you directly walk out of the main door? Ji Nuan turned back. It's what I said earlier. Today is the weekend, and the traffic will definitely be bad. Driving will take up too much time, so I suggested that your brother-in-law not drive today. Not driving? Ji Mengran was shocked. Then how are we going to go? Of course we'll take a taxi. Jinwan's tone was mild. She held onto Mo Jingshan's arm and raised her eyes to look at him. Why don't we just take the public bus? Let's just treat it as accompanying the great Seo Mo to observe the customs of the people. How about it? Mo Jingshan's tone was mild. The public bus. Ji Mengran suddenly regretted following them out. She had never taken a public bus in her entire life. Going out with someone like Mo Jingshan, whose net worth could not be easily estimated, yet they actually had to take a 1 or 2 yuan public bus. Was there something wrong with Jinwan's brain? Ji Mengran bit her lips in anger. She walked up to suggest a different method of travel, but the two of them had already walked far away. Chapter 37. Jinwan and Mo Jingshan walked out of the villa. They completely ignored Ji Mengran, who was behind them, and followed behind her. It was fine if they wanted to go shopping together, but Ji Mengran should not even think about sitting in Mo Jingshan's car. Not only could she not let Ji Mengran sit in the front passenger seat, she could not even sit in the back. She definitely could not let Mo Jingshan's car have the slightest bit of Ji Mengran's smell. When they arrived at the bus stop, Ji Mengran looked at the crowd waiting nearby. They were dressed in expensive clothes, carrying cheap bags that cost 1 to 2,000 yuan, and were wearing unpleasant and tasteless perfume. She immediately hid to the side with a look of disgust. Big sister, should we take a taxi? There are so many people on the bus, and there are so many people lining up here. It's really too crowded. Ji Mengran approached Jinwan's side and made a final struggle. Anyway, there aren't many stops. It won't be a big deal if we squeeze a little. Jinwan did not even turn back or look at her. I heard that there are many thieves on the bus, and the smell on these people is also very... She had yet to finish speaking when the bus they planned to take suddenly stopped in front of them. A group of people lined up in an orderly manner. Only 2 or 3 people squeezed up. Mo Jingshan raised his hand to protect Jinwan as they lined up at the back. The two of them did not even listen to Ji Mengran's words. She saw that Mo Jingshan did not show the slightest bit of disdain. It was likely that he had never taken a bus in his entire life, but he actually lowered himself to line up with Jinwan. Thinking back to the incident where he personally bought Jinwan glutinous rice balls, Ji Mengran was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. Seeing that they had already boarded the bus, she had no choice but to follow up. There were not many people on this bus. At the very least, there were a few seats. However, only 2 of the seats were next to each other. The others were all by themselves, and they were all in the back row. Jinwan naturally sat with Mo Jingshan in the 2 seats in the front row. The moment Ji Mengran approached, she discovered that there was no seat for her. There are seats in the last few rows, Jinwan reminded. Ji Mengran had no choice but to go to the back of the bus. However, she didn't expect that there were a few old people who often came out for a walk in the last few rows of the bus. 2 of them were coughing non-stop. The air here was indescribably dirty compared to the front. She stood there for a long time with a look of disgust, considering whether she should sit down or not. Suddenly, a car in front of the bus came to a screeching halt. Ji Mengran couldn't stand still and could only sit down angrily. When the old man saw this young lady, he smiled kindly at her. However, when he saw the disgust and indescribable expression on her face, the expressions of the old men around him immediately turned cold. As for Jinwan, it was true that she had never taken a bus before. However, in the last few years of her previous life, she was so poor that she could barely afford to take a bus. After saving for so long, the cheap mode of transportation became a habit. She turned to look at Mo Jingshan. Not only did he not complain that there were too many people here, but he also did not seem uncomfortable at all. Even though he was sitting on the bus, his aura was still the same, noble and calm. The sunlight outside the window shone in. This man was really good-looking. Taking the bus, are you used to it? Jinwan leaned close to his ear to ask softly. The man chuckled softly, his tone calm and indifferent. Do you think I've never taken one before? You've actually taken a bus before? Jinwan did not dare to believe it. She would never have imagined that as the heir of the Mo family, the great Zhou Mo who was born with a high status, he would actually have such a down-to-earth experience. Mo Jingshan's thin lips calmly spat out 2 words. When I was studying abroad, I lived alone for 2 years. The meaning behind his words was that he had once lived an independent life without his family following him, without any helpers or aunties to take care of him. That kind of life was so free that he could take the bus whenever he wanted and do whatever he wanted to do. There were no rules to restrict him, and he did not need to guard his noble status to stand at a high place. He could even be down to earth without any disgust. She really wanted to know how different the Mo Jingshan of that time was from the current him. Jinwan leaned close to his ear to whisper, "What should I do? We've already been married for so long, but I actually only know a little about you. Will you despise me?" The man's eyes were filled with a deep smile. He turned his head and lowered his eyes to look at her as she leaned closer. With just a turn of their heads, the distance between them was so close that they could feel each other's breathing. The bus was filled with people. Jinwan was startled for a moment and subconsciously moved back. However, her hand was suddenly held by him, not allowing her to move away. Mo Jingshan's voice was soft and indifferent. Only she could hear it. "Mrs. Mo, there's still a lot of time. We can get to know each other better every day." Get to know each other better? Jinwan's face heated up. She rushed to pull her hand out of his grasp. The man did not let go. Just like that, Jinwan's face was red as he held her hand. On the bus, they watched the passers-by going up and down. Sitting at the back, Ji Mengran had to endure the coughs and unpleasant smells of the people around her. She also had to raise her eyes to watch the 2 people in the front row who were intimately connected. After much difficulty, they could alight from the bus. Ji Mengran was the first to rush down. She hurriedly patted her clothes, afraid that the various smells on the bus would linger on her. She turned to see Mo Jingshan and Jinwan alight from the bus. She pretended to be calm as she casually said, "Big sister, earlier on, you should be more mindful of your image on the bus. I was sitting so far away from you, but I saw the 2 of you kissing each other. It's not good for others to see." Jinwan coldly glanced at her. "We're husband and wife. It's not like we're having an affair. Are you afraid of others seeing us whispering in the bus?" "What I mean is, Brother Jingshan is the CEO of Mo Corporation. What if he bumped into an employee from his company and saw the usually high and mighty big boss actually taking the bus and being so intimate with a woman on the bus? It wouldn't be good if they spoke carelessly in the company." Ji Mingran's gaze landed on Jinwan's hand. Before she could finish speaking, Jinwan had already wrapped her arms around Mo Jingshan's. Did she think they were conjoined twins? Couldn't they be separated for even a moment? Right now, Jinwan was so lovey-dovey. It was really irritating. "What do you mean by being so intimate with a woman? I'm Mo Jingshan's official wife." "But," Jinwan calmly interrupted her. "Besides, the employees of Mo Corporation aren't bad. They aren't stupid. If they really saw us, they would be curious and go online to check my photo to see if I'm Mrs. Mo or some other woman. Before confirming it, they wouldn't be so stupid as to run to the company to speak carelessly. Do you think anyone dares to spread gossip about Mo Jingshan?" Chapter 38. The place where she got off was a distance from the downtown street. This time, Jinwan didn't plan to take the bus or call a taxi. She decided to walk there. Although it was only a 10-minute walk, Ji Mengran was still furious. Mo Jingshan had never objected to Jinwan's decisions. There was a car available, but she refused to drive or take a taxi. Instead, she insisted on taking the tiring bus. Now, she even had to walk. Was Jinwan's brain damaged? Ji Mengran followed behind with an unhappy expression. She raised her eyes to see that Jinwan was leaning her head against Mo Jingshan's shoulder as they walked. It was unknown what they were talking about intimately. Damn it, Jinwan wasn't planning to keep showing off her love today, was she? If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have followed him out. She originally wanted to find a chance to speak with him alone, but until now, she didn't have the chance. Not only would he not have a chance, but he would also be blinded by their public display of affection. On the bustling commercial street in the center of Sea City, shopping was, after all, a woman's hobby. Mo Jingshan rarely visited such places. Every time he passed by, he would only take a quick glance in the car. Jinwan took his hand and pointed at the stores one by one. She used to frequent all kinds of luxury stores, but now she just passed by and did not intend to go in. After walking for about half an hour, Ji Mengran followed behind in her high heels. She was so tired that her feet almost didn't belong to her. "Sister, what kind of clothes do you want to buy? Are you going to wear a gown or something for Elder Mo's birthday? Hurry up and choose a set." Jinwan appeared as though she did not hear anything and continued to hold Mo Jingshan's arm as they walked forward. As they walked, she asked Mo Jingshan, "What does grandfather Mo like? For his 80th birthday, I don't think the most important thing is how I dress, but what to give him to make him happy. Immediately give him a great-grandson. He'll probably be so happy that he'll live for another 20 years. Mo Jingshan's low voice rang by her ears. Jinwan glared at him. "I'm not joking with you. I really plan on buying grandfather Mo a birthday present first." Mo Jingshan watched her glistening eyes and chuckled softly. "I'm not joking." Jinwan did not reply, but her heart was beating wildly for a long time. Just as they were talking about gifts, Mo Jingshan actually brought up the topic of her great-grandson. As Jinwan continued to walk, she subconsciously stole a glance at her belly. Although she didn't say it out loud, she was already thinking about it in her heart. She did not know if their first child would be a boy or a girl. A boy would definitely look like him, tall and handsome to the point of charming all kinds of young ladies. If it was a girl, she would have to look half like her and half like him. This was because Mo Jingshan's facial features were all perfect. No matter how you looked at them, they were all good-looking. As she thought about it, Jinwan's gaze drifted past a baby products store. In her previous life, she had never dared to dream of giving birth to Mo Jingshan's child. At that time, she did not even have the chance to see him again, much less have a child. "Sister, there's a high-end clothing customization center up ahead. My best friend often goes there to order gowns. Let's go take a look." Ji Mengran suddenly walked over from behind, blocking Jinwan's gaze that was drifting toward the baby products store. She raised her voice to speak. Jinwan glanced at the shop Ji Mengran mentioned. "It's your 80th birthday, not a banquet. Why would you wear a gown?" "But didn't Dad say that? There will definitely be a lot of people that day. You can't possibly wear your usual clothes, can you?" Ji Mengran pursed her lips. "There's no need to be so high-profile. Just buy something comfortable and elegant. Sister, you used to love wearing gowns. In the past, you would order one every week." "That was in the past, not now." Ji Mengran did not manage to gain any good words and decided to complain. "Brother Jingshan, look at my sister. Right now, she seems to be especially impatient with me. I'm just giving you a kind suggestion." "Kind suggestion?" She was clearly reminding him. It reminded Mo Jingshan of how arrogant and conceited Jinwan was in the past. In the past, Jinwan would often follow her father to attend various charity banquets or business banquets. Her every movement was filled with the beauty and pride of a wealthy family's young lady. She was known as Hai Cheng's #1 young lady. Of course, aside from Jinwan's appearance, there was also the variety of beautiful evening gowns she never wore. Every time, it was enough to stun people. In the past, Jinwan was so extravagant and high-profile. Right now, she was so simple and low-key in front of Mo Jingshan, as though she was not the same person in the past. In other words, Jinwan had always been pretending. Ji Mengran was purposely trying to remind Mo Jingshan of the past Jinwan. The Jinwan who was as proud as a peacock. The Jinwan who made a fuss about divorcing him for half a year. This kind of woman was really not worthy of him. That's right. Dressing appropriately and elegantly for a birthday banquet is the most appropriate. It's a birthday celebration, not a beauty pageant. Gowns are indeed not appropriate. Mo Jingshan's tone was neither salty nor light. Mo Jingshan's words had just landed when he stopped in front of a chess hall. Jinwan ignored Ji Mengran, who was angered to the point her face was ashen. She raised her eyes to look at the chess hall and asked in understanding, "Does grandfather Mo like to play this kind of chess?" Mo Jingshan's voice was low and mild. During the late Tang dynasty, the chess record left behind by the famous Gu Shiyan was purchased by the owner of this hall. Someone once offered a high price of 100 million yuan, but it was not sold. To this day, it is still here. A chess record from the late Tang dynasty? Then grandfather Mo will definitely like it. However, from his tone, it was likely that the other party would not easily sell it. If he was not willing to sell it for 100 million yuan, then it was likely that he would not sell it for 200 million yuan. This owner was clearly someone who did not lack money. Furthermore, his hobbies and obsession could not be compared to money. Her eyes shone as she suggested, "Why don't we go in to take a look? If we can meet the owner, we can discuss with him and see how much we can sell it for." Mo Jingshan glanced at her. "You want to gain grandfather's favor that much? Grandfather Mo treats me very well. His 80th birthday is such a special day. I have to give him a gift that he will really like." Jin Wan was very sincere. Mo Jingshan looked at her clear eyes and suddenly smiled. Ji Mengran, who was behind him, suddenly leaned over. "Isn't that simple? Doesn't Dad have an ancient jade chessboard from the early Tang dynasty? Bring that over to Elder Mo, or bring the chessboard here to exchange for a chess record. As long as this owner isn't stupid, he will definitely choose to exchange a chess record from the late Tang dynasty for an early Tang dynasty chessboard." As she spoke, Ji Mengran appeared to want to perform well in front of Mo Jingshan. She took the initiative to pick up her phone to call home. However, Mo Jingshan continued to focus on Jin Wan. "You really want to give this?" Jin Wan nodded, staring at him anxiously. "But if I use my dad's chessboard to exchange for it, will it work?" Mo Jingshan coldly curved his lips. "There's no need." After speaking, he held her hand and walked into the hall, leaving Ji Mengran, who was still on the phone, behind. Chapter 39. Jin Wan completely did not know why Mo Jingshan had brought her in. The owner of this chess hall was clearly very close to him. When he heard that Mo Jingshan had personally come to visit, he actually came out to welcome him. The owner's surname was Su. He was around 70 or 80 years old. His hair and beard were all white, and he wore gold-rimmed glasses. His tone was very ancient. Being in this hall, Jin Wan thought that she had accidentally barged into some ancient place. It was extremely ancient, but she could tell that every door and every table was meticulously made. The price would not be cheap. As expected, in the most prosperous city in the country, there were many crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Originally, Jin Wan wanted to explain the reason for her visit to this boss Su. In the end, the waiter here invited her to the private room for tea. Mo Jingshan went in alone with boss Su to talk. Even if they were very close, or if this boss Su was an elder that Mo Jingshan was familiar with, she believed that the other party would not easily hand over such a precious item. Even if Mo Jingshan offered a higher price, it would not be so easy. So, what exactly did they go inside for? And so secretive, Wan drank her tea, dipping it in the spilled tea. She wrote and drew on the table to kill time. "Mrs. Mo, there's a Miss G outside who said she came with you and Tomo. We were unable to confirm her identity, so we did not let her in. She said she's your sister." A waiter suddenly came in and asked her respectfully, "Do you want to let her in?" Jin Wan did not expect that this hall was not a place that anyone could casually enter. Since she was blocked outside, then continue, stay outside. "I don't know her," she said as she took another sip of tea, as though it had nothing to do with her. The waiter respectfully nodded at her and left. The private room regained its silence. In such an environment, Jin Wan really did not dare to act rashly. It was better to let Ji Mengran in to avoid polluting other people's place. After Ji Mengran received her reply, she angrily tried to explain but was still not allowed to enter. A few minutes later, Ji Mengran's call came in. She was clearly here to question Jin Wan. Jin Wan switched her phone to silent mode, tossing it to the side and ignoring it. The call came in 4 or 5 times. In the end, he finally gave up, and the screen quietly dimmed. About 2 hours later, Jin Wan got up and went to the bathroom. When she came out of the bathroom, she suddenly saw the door of the inner room open. She hurried over to take a look. Mo Jingshan's figure appeared at the same time as Boss Su. Seeing that his clothes were neat and tidy, Jinwan finally released a breath. She had waited for too long, so she wasn't sure what had happened. Earlier, she almost suspected that Mo Jingshan had sold himself in order to help her obtain the chess record. She even suspected that this Boss Su had some bad hobbies. As expected, she had thought too much. Jinwan secretly chuckled. She walked over and saw that Boss Su was chatting happily with Mo Jingshan. The moment Boss Su saw Jinwan's expression, he immediately smiled teasingly. "Look, your wife has been waiting anxiously." Mo Jingshan lightly curved his lips, calm and noble. "I've indeed waited for a long time. All right, my heart is aching right now. I really don't want to talk. You two can go wherever you want to go. I have to think of a way to calm down." Boss Su raised his hand and waved at them. Jinwan originally wanted to discuss with Boss Su to see if she could really use the chessboard to exchange for the chess record. In the end, he wanted to leave just like that. She stared at the white-bearded old man in front of her with a dazed expression. Before she could find a chance to speak, she was directly pulled out by Mo Jingshan. "What did you talk to him about in there? Is he unwilling to give it to us no matter how much money we spend?" Jinwan curiously asked. Mo Jingshan did not speak. His gaze was calm and unruffled. He glanced at Jinwan. The beautiful, confused, curious, anxious, and slightly upset little woman who was unable to obtain what she wanted. "I say, it's rare to find out what grandfather Mo likes. Since you've already brought me here, you can't possibly go empty-handed." Jinwan's words suddenly choked. She stared in shock at the chess record that Mo Jingshan suddenly handed to her. She stared at it in shock for a long time before reaching out to receive it. She carefully flipped it open and glanced at him in shock. "This, he actually gave it to us? How much did you spend?" Mo Jingshan gave an unfathomable smile and walked out without replying. "How much exactly did you spend?" This is a gift I wanted to give to grandfather Mo, not something you gave it to me, so you have to put it on my tab. I can earn it myself. As long as I have some time." "I didn't spend a single cent." Mo Jingshan saw her anxious appearance and no longer kept her in suspense. "How is that possible?" The two of them walked out of the clubhouse. Jinwan politely nodded at the people inside and politely said goodbye. She then held the extremely valuable chess record in her hands and asked, "What exactly happened? Didn't you say that someone spent 100 million yuan and still couldn't buy it? If you didn't spend any money, could it be? Could it be that Mo Jingshan had agreed to some difficult request? She did not wish for him to be controlled by others or agree to unreasonable conditions because of her." "Elder Su is a chess fanatic," Mo Jingshan calmly stated. "I made a bet with him. If I win against him on the chessboard, the chess record will belong to me." Shock. Apart from shock, there was more shock. Jinwan's mouth fell open for a long time before she asked in disbelief, "You know how to play chess?" Although grandfather isn't as obsessed as Elder Su, he can be considered half an expert. From the age of 3, I was forced onto the chessboard by him to play with him. What do you think? Mo Jingshan's words were unhurried. Jinwan was so shocked that she could barely close her mouth. She pressed against his side and softly asked with uncertainty, "You really didn't spend a single cent?" The man glanced at her, his brows handsome and stern. "Your husband's face isn't even worth 100 million yuan? What an expensive face." Jinwan swallowed her saliva. "It's worth it, definitely worth it." "Happy? Happy. Shouldn't you let me be happy tonight as well?" The man's low and seductive voice brushed against her ears. "Tonight, it depends on your performance, en?" Jinwan stared at him in a daze. The chess record in her hands instantly felt as though it weighed 1,000 pounds. She recalled that she had waited too long inside and had even gone to the bathroom. It was in the bathroom that she discovered that. Jinwan licked her lips, tiptoed to his ear, and softly whispered something. Mo Jingshan's expression instantly froze. She cleared her throat. Seeing his expression, she timidly held the chess record in her hands and looked at him. She said pitifully, "Then, should I return it to you first?" As she spoke, she even put on an expression as though she was willing to part with it and hand it over to him for safekeeping. Mo Jingshan was angered to the point of laughing. Chapter 40. The bustling street was bustling with people. Under Mo Jingshan's gaze, Jinwon happily held the chess record in her hands as she walked. She did not turn back to see the man's angered expression. Not far away was Hai Cheng's largest department store. Jinwon opened her mouth. Actually, I have a lot of suitable clothes at home. There are also many new ones that haven't even had their tags removed. I might as well buy a suitable coat today. As she spoke, she suddenly glanced at the long coat displayed in the display window of a branded store. She was about to walk over. However, her waist was suddenly tightened. Mo Jingshan directly pulled her back. She raised her head in confusion only to hear the man's low and heavy voice by her ears. It's too thin. How about the one beside it? No. It's only early autumn. I don't think it's very thin. Jinwon's lips trembled, but her gaze had already instinctively searched for thicker coats. Before she could finish looking, Mo Jingshan had already held her hand, leading her into another branded store by the side. A white cashmere coat displayed in the glass window of the store caught Jinwon's eyes. It was of moderate thickness and could be worn from autumn to early winter. It was simple and elegant, yet did not lose the sleekness of a branded design. It was a classic and elegant style. Jinwon raised her eyes in astonishment. She saw that Mo Jingshan seemed to be satisfied with this one. As a man who rarely shopped, Mo Jingshan's taste and foresight were indeed very high. Jinwon also liked this one. She directly called for a shop assistant to find a suitable size for her to try on. She wore the coat as she turned back and forth in front of the full-length mirror. The two shop assistants by the side had expressions of astonishment and praise. Miss, this one really suits you. Your skin is so white, and your figure is so good. This coat looks even better on you than on a model. It's especially elegant. Jinwon subconsciously turned to look at Mo Jingshan, who was sitting on the sofa in front of the store. He was sitting there, handsome, noble and clear. His silent, cold, and noble aura could not be ignored. He was noble and extraordinary. From time to time, a few of the shop assistants in the store would secretly glance at the man sitting on the sofa in the lounge. Their eyes were filled with all kinds of admiration and curiosity. There were also some younger girls who couldn't stop their faces from blushing and palpitating. Do you have men's clothing in your store? Jinwon's gaze shifted to the men's clothing area next to the fitting room. Yes, Mississippi. Would you like to choose clothes for the gentleman who came with you? Jinwon did not speak and turned to walk over. Previously, she had bought a shirt for Mo Jingshan, but she had not bought a matching tie. Today, he was wearing the one she had bought. In the end, she chose one of them, hid the tie behind her, and walked out with a smile. Are you done? Mo Jingshan put down the magazine he had casually picked up and raised his eyes to look at her. His gaze immediately revealed some satisfaction. It was a fact that Jinwon looked beautiful no matter what she wore. What he was satisfied with was that this coat was indeed warm enough to prevent her from catching a cold again. Is it nice? Jinwon tilted her head in front of him and asked, like a shy little girl who had gone shopping with her boyfriend for the first time. Very good. The man was not stingy with his praise. Which woman didn't like to be praised? Jinwon smiled and her beautiful eyes curved. She then whispered mysteriously, stand up for a moment. Mo Jingshan's brows did not move. He looked at her and cooperatively stood up. Jinwon raised her eyes to look at the man in front of her who was much taller than her. She took out the tie she had hidden and quickly put it on his neck. When Mo Jingshan slightly raised his eyebrows in understanding, she skillfully fastened the tie on his collar and then looked at the incomparably handsome man in front of her. Not to mention the surrounding shop staff who were infatuated, even Jinwon's heart was slightly swayed. No matter in terms of charisma or any other aspect, Mo Jingshan was impeccable. In this life, what she wanted to do was to cherish everything she had and take back everything that belonged to her. She wanted to protect all the people she wanted to protect. She definitely would not let herself repeat the same mistakes. Toward Mo Jingshan, she admitted that her heart had always been moved. She could not bear to part with him and could not leave him. She had thought that he was the obsession of her previous lives. She thought that it was enough as long as she did not lose him again. However, she never dared to think too deeply about it. Jin Wan held onto the man's tie and suddenly felt that it was burning. She then met Mo Jingshan's eyes that were as calm as the sea. Her fingers gradually tightened around the tie. Jin Wan, what you want now, don't you think it's more than before? For a moment, Jin Wan could barely hear the praises and envious voices of the shop staff. She was lost in thought for a moment, until Mo Jingshan pressed her hand down and held it. He lowered his eyes to look at her. Why are you in a daze? Jin Wan returned to her senses. She subconsciously recalled that they were surrounded by people and rushed to pull her hand out. However, she was unable to do so. He did not let go. Sir, your girlfriend must have been so mesmerized by your handsomeness that she couldn't speak. The shop staff by the side praised him with a smile. Jin Wan did not speak, but her face heated up. Was she moved? She asked herself honestly. Of course she was moved. Earlier, she was moved to the point that she was afraid of herself. Not my girlfriend. She's my wife. Mo Jingshan repeated the moment the shop staff finished speaking. Seeing that Jin Wan was acting like a shy little wife, he directly said, "Wrap up the tie and the one she's wearing. Is there any other piece that you like?" The latter question was directed at Jin Wan. Jin Wan shook her head. This is the only piece of female clothing in this shop that I like the most. Furthermore, I don't lack any other clothes. I'll just buy one for now. After walking out of the shop, Jin Wan glanced at the man by her side who was carrying shopping bags. For some reason, she felt a sense of accomplishment to have someone like Mo Jingshan accompany her to shop. The two of them walked back to the department store by the side. With a glance, they saw Ji Mengran, who was anxiously pacing back and forth outside the door. It had already been so long, and she had yet to leave? Jin Wan slightly raised her brows. At the same time, the corners of her lips curved up. The moment Ji Mengran saw the two of them, she rushed over and said in a flustered and exasperated manner, "Sister, why did you leave me behind earlier? You caused me to wait outside the club for a long time, but I still couldn't see anyone. Later on, I went to the milk tea shop by the side and sat for a while. When I came out to ask them, the people from the club said that you had already left. Why didn't you wait for me?" Jin Wan coldly glanced at her. "Earlier on, you were on the phone. We thought that you had something to do, so you didn't go in. When we came out, we didn't see you and thought that you had left. I didn't even leave. I waited for you for so long. But you didn't even pick up my call." Ji Mingran's face was long from anger. Chapter 41. Oh, when we slept last night, our phones were all set to silent. I didn't hear it. Jin Wan's tone was indifferent. Ji Mengran gritted her teeth. "You're trying to get rid of me on purpose, aren't you?" Jin Wan immediately glanced at her with a joking expression. "Why would I shake you off? All these years, when have I not put you, my little sister, first? Dad asked us to go out to buy things and you had to follow us. I didn't refuse." "Sister, you're obviously avoiding me on purpose. If you're annoyed that I'm coming out with you, you could have just said so when we were at home. What are you doing now?" After waiting for so long, Ji Mengran was really annoyed. "Mengran, your words are a bit too much. Every time I took you out shopping in the past, when were you not late? The longest I've ever waited for you was 2 hours. Why are you so angry just because you couldn't find us for a few hours? I'm anxious. I'm afraid something will happen to you and brother Jingshin." Ji Mengran did not intend to make things too awkward and changed the topic. "What could possibly happen to us? Mengran, don't blame me for scolding you. You're getting more and more surprised recently." Ji Mengran was about to explode from anger. In the end, Jin Wan's words nearly caused her internal organs to bleed. She gritted her teeth, but her expression slowly turned stiff. "I was just too anxious, that's all. That's why I said a few more words." Jin Wan coldly curved her lips and did not look at her again. She held Emo Jingshin's hand and entered the department store. In the end, Jin-won only bought a few simple things. Ji Mengran followed along and saw a dress that cost more than 100,000 yuan. She wanted Jin-won to swipe Emo Jingshin's card to buy it for her, but Jin-won pretended not to understand. In the end, Ji Mengran swiped the card herself with an ugly expression. In the past, no matter what Ji Mengran liked, Jin-won would buy it for her. Who would have thought that the Jin-won who used to dote on her sister to the point where many people were jealous of her would actually be so cold-blooded? He didn't even want to buy her a dress that cost more than 100,000. Ji Mengran did not find a chance to speak to him alone until they were on the car back. Right now, Jin-won was like a dog's skin plaster by Emo Jingshin's side. She would not leave for even a moment. How annoying! On his way back to the Ji family, he didn't take the bus. Instead, under Ji Mingran's strong request, he changed to a private car. Jin-won did not intend to go along with Ji Mingran's wishes, but it was already past 6 in the evening. In the autumn season, the sky darkened earlier. She did not wish to waste time on the road. Ji Mengran had already called for a car from the car rental company to pick her up, so she let her be. Anyway, this day's torture was enough to make Ji Mingran's heart hurt. Right now, Jin-won's mind was completely focused on the chess record in her hands. She carefully placed it into the leather lining of her bag to prevent it from being splashed with water or stained with something dirty. Master, why did you take a detour? When Jin-won raised her head, she suddenly noticed that the route was not right. It's rush hour right now. The few roads in front are already blocked, so we can only take Haiwan Road. The driver drove the car towards Haiwan Road without hesitation as he answered cautiously. Hearing the unusual tone in his voice, Jin-won immediately looked at Emo Jingshin, who was sitting in the passenger seat. Sure enough, Emo Jingshin had detected something wrong with the driver before she did. He had already checked the lock on the car door. Through the rearview mirror, she met his gaze and saw the answer in his eyes. The door was locked. Jin-won finally noticed that the driver's hair was slightly long, barely covering his ears. Now that she took a closer look, she discovered that there was a small black earpiece hidden in his ear, similar to the type used for surveillance. Furthermore, the driver's forehead was constantly dripping with sweat. Even though it was already autumn, the car was not that hot. He had been constantly sweating, and as he drove, his gaze hid hints of fear, confusion, and despair. Jin-won silently raised her hand and tried the back door. As expected, it was locked and could not be opened. She raised her eyes, continuing to look at Emo Jingshin through the rearview mirror. His expression remained cold and calm. The instant their eyes met, Emo Jingshin decisively reached out his hand. His arms swiftly moved to the left, pressing down on the driver's shoulder. His voice was low and heavy, but it gave off a heavy sense of danger. "Stop the car." The driver's entire body instantly trembled, and the sweat on his forehead increased. He closed his eyes in despair, his voice trembling as he said, It's too late." The moment he finished speaking, the driver's head suddenly dropped forward, as though he had been drugged. He could no longer hold on and fainted. The speeding car abruptly sped forward due to losing control of its direction. Ji Mengran, who was sitting by Jin-won's side, finally realized something was wrong. She then cried out due to the driver's strange behavior. "Oh, what's wrong with the driver? What happened?" Jin-won's hand rushed to open the car door. Emo Jingshin, who was sitting in front, had already decisively kicked the unconscious driver to the side. He sat in the driver's seat and took control of the steering wheel to prevent the car from losing control. 3 seconds later, he suddenly spoke. His tone carried a chill that made one feel as though they had fallen into an ice cave. "The car has been modified. The speed is set at 150, and the brakes are out of order. At this speed, we can't use normal methods to slow down the car." "Then what should we do?" Ji Mengran screamed shrilly. "Why did the driver suddenly faint? Is someone trying to kill us?" Hearing Ji Mingran scream, Jin-won was certain that this murder had nothing to do with her. Furthermore, Ji Mengran was sitting in this car. There was no way she would put herself in danger. Furthermore, Emo Jingshin was also in this car. Based on her infatuation with Emo Jingshin, Ji Mingran's suspicions could be eliminated immediately. Is the fuel tank full? Ji Nuan stuck her head out, asking as she looked at the fuel gauge in front of Mo Jingshan. With one look, Ji Nuan's heart instantly sank. It was actually full. It was impossible to stop the car after the fuel ran out. It would take at least 5 to 6 hours to run out of fuel. The car's speed remained unchanged at 150 as it sped through the city. Haiwan Road was close to the large sea and open beach in the east of the city. Furthermore, it was a circular road that circled around the seaside. This kind of speed was undoubtedly suicidal during the 6 p.m. rush hour. Furthermore, there were no roads that could lead them to the suburbs or safety zones. The only way forward was to head straight for the center of the city. Mo Jingshan suddenly said coldly, "Sit tight." Ji Mingran's face was already filled with fear as she tightly gripped onto the seatbelt. Her face was already pale from fear. Ji Nuan silently glanced at the unconscious driver who had been kicked to the front passenger seat. The driver clearly knew of this plot from the start. From the looks of his earphones and the drugs he had been drugged, it was likely that he was forced to risk his life to do such a thing. Who on earth was it that was so ruthless and direct? They clearly wanted them to die. Chapter 42. Right in front of them, a large truck suddenly sped over. The speed of the car was abnormally fast, heading straight in their direction. Ji Mengran abruptly screamed, "What should we do? What should we do? Will we die? I don't want to die. Shut up." Ji Nuan harshly reprimanded her. Ji Mengran was already scared out of her wits. Her screams did not stop, and she did not have any intentions of stopping. Her hands gripped the seatbelt so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Ji Nuan, who had already died once, could not say that she was not afraid of this life-threatening situation, but she could still deal with it rationally. When she saw Mo Jingshan sitting in front, controlling the steering wheel and their lives, she saw the calmness in his eyes, and the fear in her heart lessened. "Open the windows," Mo Jingshan suddenly ordered. "All right." Ji Nuan immediately cooperated, even though she did not understand the meaning of his request in such a dangerous situation. But after reaching out to try, she raised her eyes in shock. "The doors are locked and the windows are also locked." Mo Jingshan furrowed his brows. At the moment when he was about to collide with the truck, accompanied by a cry of despair, he abruptly turned the car around and drove straight toward the unobstructed coastline on the other side. "No. The doors won't open, we'll drown," Ji Mengran cried hoarsely. "No, I don't want to drown," but the car was already out of control. Even when she tried to stand up, her legs were too weak to move. Her entire body was plastered against the seat, her eyes filled with fear. "Quiet down." Ji Nuan turned to glare at her fiercely. "Do you want to be smashed into meat paste by the truck here? Or do you want to charge through the city center, losing your life while bumping into innocent people?" Fear had already taken over Ji Mingran's rationality. "If we ram them to death, then so be it. What does it have to do with me? If we charge into the sea like this, we'll definitely die. We'll die. If you yell one more time, I'll strangle you to death," Ji Nuan coldly said. With that, she looked up at Mo Jingshan, who had already driven the car into the sea. The moment the car plunged into the sea, she smiled at him. The car was controlled, and the doors and windows were locked. They were too far from the desolate countryside, and there were either trucks or crowds of people in the city center in front of them. Even though driving the car into the sea might be a dead end, as long as Mo Jingshan was here, she was not afraid. At first, the seawater didn't sink too quickly, but the deeper they sank, the faster it sank. The cold water gradually covered the soles of their feet. The car could no longer be controlled in the water. Mo Jingshan moved his hands away from the steering wheel. He raised his black eyes and saw Ji Nuan glancing at him through the rearview mirror. His heart seemed to have been struck by something. He stared into her eyes, but at the same time, she suddenly reached out and covered Mingran's mouth with a fierce expression, which was still wailing like a ghost and howling like a wolf. Mo Jingshan softly chuckled. The body of the car was sinking at a frightening speed without end. The bone-chilling seawater poured into her nose and mouth. Ji Mengren finally could no longer scream. She returned to her senses and rushed to remove her stilettos to knock against the well-sealed car window. Even though she knew this method was futile, Jinwan did not stop her. She struggled to open her eyes in the water and looked at Mo Jingshan, who was reaching for the pillow above the front passenger seat. What was he trying to do? The deeper the car sank, the greater the water pressure. Even if the car door was not locked, it could not be opened. Due to the water pressure, the car window could not be easily smashed. However, in the past few years, she had heard of a method to save herself underwater on the internet. It was to pull out the small pillow above the front passenger seat. After pulling it out, she would see two slender metal rods that were used to hold the seat in place. Although the car window could not be smashed open, it could be pried open. After prying it open, the water pressure in the car would be reduced. Only then could they break open the car window. Jinwan rushed to pull out the other one. This way, they could quickly pry open the car window with him. It was unknown how deep the car had sunk, but the feeling of suffocation was growing stronger. Thankfully, Mo Jingshan had pried open the car window first. Jinwan picked up the other metal rod and smashed it against the car window. The car window finally began to crack. Jinwan rushed forward to use her hands to pry open the excess glass. She had just reached out when Mo Jingshan directly pulled her away, using his gaze to indicate for her to use the two metal rods to knock on the other side. At this time, he was still worried that her hands would be cut. Jinwan understood and did not wish to add to his troubles. She obediently cooperated with him and opened the car windows on both sides. When they were finally able to squeeze out of the car, Jinwan's vision was already blurry from the suffocation. Mo Jingshan could see that although she was calm in the face of danger, her strength was almost completely exhausted. He reached out to carry her, using his gaze to look at her as though asking if she could still swim up. Jinwan silently nodded in his embrace. She then pointed up and nodded again, indicating that she could swim. All of a sudden, Ji Mengran, who was struggling to squeeze out of the car window, reached out and grabbed onto Jinwan's ankle tightly. It was as though she was afraid that they would throw her into the water to wait for death. Mo Jingshan's brows furrowed. His gaze turned even colder and deeper. He glanced at Ji Mengran. Clearly, aside from Jinwan, who was in his embrace, the life and death of others had nothing to do with him. The suffocation on Jinwan's chest was too unbearable. Right now, she did not have the strength to kick him away. She could not be bothered to think too much and decided to ignore him. Saving her life was the most important thing. Although her ankle was being grabbed and her body was becoming heavier, thankfully, Mo Jingshan had been holding on to her and did not allow her to sink further. As they swam up, because the hand on her ankle was too tight, Jinwan could not help but open her mouth in pain. She unintentionally choked on a mouthful of seawater, and her entire body tightened. It was so unbearable that she almost coughed out. She forcefully endured the pain in her chest as her hand continued to move upwards. When they finally emerged from the water, Jinwan could no longer hold it in. She coughed violently several times until her eyes turned red. This terrible feeling was too similar to when she coughed out blood and suffocated to death in her previous life. She subconsciously tightened her grip on Mo Jingshan's arm that was wrapped around her waist. She raised her eyes to see the man's deep gaze on her. "Can you still swim?" he asked softly. Jinwan resisted the coughing sound and nodded. Her voice was hoarse as she said, "It's all right. I still have strength." His heavy gaze revealed traces of worry and heartache. "It's really all right. I can do it." Jinwan's wet eyes were filled with determination. Chapter 43. Earlier, the speed of the car was too fast. From the looks of it, the beach was still 400 to 500 meters away. As Jinwan was brought forward by Mo Jingshan, she also did her best to paddle forward, trying her best to avoid giving him too much of a burden. Ji Mengran held onto Jinwan tightly after leaving the water, unwilling to let go no matter what. "We're almost there." Jinwan saw that the beach was getting closer. "Can you still hold on?" As they neared their destination, Mo Jingshan's voice was no longer as heavy as before. Jinwan nodded. "I can." He looked at her face, and his dark eyes seemed to be surging with some kind of emotion. His low and hoarse voice was tinged with a bit of imperceptible praise. With your physical strength, it's not easy to swim up from below, but you still have the willpower to swim over. Jinwan watched as they neared the beach, her heart relaxing. I have to hold on. Let go of me. I can swim over by myself. Mo Jingshan finally released her. A few minutes later, they were about to reach the beach. Because the sand beneath her feet was too soft, she almost lost her balance and fell into the water again. Mo Jingshan, who had been by her side, reached out and caught her. When they finally reached the beach, Jinwan did not have any strength. Mo Jingshan held her steady. The sky had already darkened. Jinwan was shivering from the cold, but she did not forget to hold onto her bag tightly. Her teeth were chattering nonstop. The chess record for Grandfather Mo is still in my bag. My bag is slightly waterproof, and my phone has always been in the leather compartment. I don't know if it's been flooded. You're still concerned about the chess record at a time like this? Mo Jingshan looked at her soaked body. His brows, which were still handsome despite falling into the water earlier, stiffened. Right now, Jinwan was indeed not feeling too well. Her face was pale, and she was so cold that she could not even speak properly. This, you won for me, and it's what Grandfather Mo likes? On an autumn night by the sea, white steam could be seen coming out of her mouth when she spoke. It was clear how cold it was. Compared to this autumn night, his gaze was much warmer. His cold brows carried a hint of tenderness for her. He reached out to push aside her messy hair that was stuck to her face. Let's leave this place first. All right. Jinwan trembled as she nodded. Her eyes seemed to sparkle under the dark sky. Ji Mengran was at the back. She collapsed on the beach and began to pant violently. She couldn't speak or move at all. Anyway, she had already followed them out of the sea. When she recovered, she would find a way to go back. After coming ashore, from beginning to end, Mo Jingshan did not even glance at her, much less say a word of concern or comfort. Ji Mengran's fingers dug deep into the sand. She was unwilling. Jinwan, what right do you have? Returning to the yew garden, Jinwan's mind relaxed. The moment she entered, she leaned against Mo Jingshan weakly. I came back alive. She took a deep breath, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. Today, if Mo Jingshan hadn't been in the car, if he hadn't been so decisive, and if he hadn't acted decisively to avoid danger, her second life would have been over. Mo Jingshan held her body that could no longer stand stably. It's all right now, En? Jinwan pressed her face against his chest, listening to his heartbeat through his wet clothes. Her tears almost fell uncontrollably. She sniffled, suppressing the agitation from escaping death. As though sensing the change in her emotions, Mo Jingshan patted her shoulder comfortingly. His low and unhurried voice approached her ears. You're only scared now? Earlier on in the sea, you were so brave. Mrs. Mo, you're actually crying the moment you return home? Did he mean that the image she had used her life to create today had collapsed in an instant? But Jinwan almost choked out. She raised her head to look at him. Can't I be agitated? He chuckled softly, pinching her cold cheeks. Congratulations, Mrs. Mo. You've survived a disaster. You're worth celebrating. Jinwan sniffled and wanted to speak, but Mo Jingshan called for Auntie Chen. Bring her to take a hot shower and change her clothes. Auntie Chen wanted to ask what had happened to them and why they were both soaked. However, when she saw Jinwan's pale face, she was frightened and did not dare to waste time asking. She rushed to help Jinwan back to her room. When Jinwan walked upstairs, she could not help but turn back to look at the man by the door. Mo Jingshan, who was usually well-dressed, was also soaked. His shirt and trousers clung tightly to his body. However, even though he looked as disheveled as her, it did not reduce his charm in the slightest. Auntie Chen helped her to take a hot shower. Jinwan did not soak in the bath but requested to take a shower. She had only discovered that her period had arrived when she went to the bathroom at the chess club. Madam, you're on your period. Your body is so cold. Are you really okay? Auntie Chen asked worriedly. It's all right. I'll be fine after I shower a little longer. Ji-Wan endured the terrible pain in her stomach and waved her hand at Auntie Chin. "Help me take out the things in my bag. Check if the chess manual and cell phone in the innermost waterproof compartment have been soaked." Auntie Chin nodded and brought her dripping bag in, wiping it clean with a towel. "The cell phone and the chess record in the innermost compartment are not wet, but the rest are soaked." Hearing this, Ji-Wan immediately released a breath of relief. "That's good." Auntie Chin saw that Ji-Wan did not have any other instructions and turned to help her boil some brown sugar water. Ji-Wan showered for a long time. It was only after Mo Jingshin had finished showering and changed his clothes that she slowly came out of the bathroom. After soaking in the cold seawater, her stomach was in so much pain that it could kill. After being bathed in hot water for a long time, her face was no longer as pale as before. There were even some hints of red. "You're done showering?" Ji-Wan saw Mo Jingshin. "And come here." Mo Jingshin saw her pink and slightly red face. His Adam's apple moved and he called out softly. Ji-Wan subconsciously walked toward him. The moment she approached, he suddenly pulled her into his embrace heavily. He placed a kiss on her forehead, and as though confirming that she was in no danger, he gently released a breath of air. Even though he did not make a sound, Ji-Wan sensitively sensed that today's situation was targeted at her. Who could it be? The Zhou family? Or the Han family? Or was it someone who had a grudge with the Ji family? In her previous life, after the Ji family went bankrupt, there were indeed many people who had grudges with the Ji family who came to find trouble with her. In both her previous lives, Ji-Wan was not unfamiliar with such cases. However, today's incident was actually aimed at taking her life. By tomorrow morning at the latest, the culprit behind the scenes will definitely be found. He lowered his voice by her ear. "Don't think too much. I'll take care of everything." Ji-Wan was quiet for a moment. "So, you already know who is behind this?" Chapter 44. Ji-Wan was indeed extremely cold. Earlier on, she had forcefully held on, but now that her determination had been shattered, she curled up in the blankets and did not bother to hide it anymore. She kept shivering, but her gaze could not help but land on his body. It was only when Mo Jingshin brought in the brown sugar water that she shifted her gaze away. Something like menstrual pain was actually seen by Mo Jingshin. Really, she had thrown her face all the way to her grandmother's house. "So, who exactly wants to harm us?" Ji-Wan asked. She paused for a moment. "Or rather, who exactly wants me dead?" Mo Jingshin handed her the brown sugar water. "There are too many cases of wealthy families hiring killers. In the future, don't return to the Ji home too often." Ji-Wan was startled, but she understood. Today's incident most likely had something to do with the Ji family's enemies. After all, Ji Mengran was the one who had called for the cab. Even if Ji Mengran was completely unaware of the situation, the other party had acted through Ji Mingran's phone. This meant that they understood the Ji family very well and had a certain grasp of Ji Mengran and Ji-Wan's whereabouts. Could it be Shinharu? Even if she was driven to desperation, it was impossible for her to use such a reckless method. After all, she still had the support of several aristocratic families behind her. Now was not the time to shed all pretense of cordiality. This kind of thing should not be done by her. Then who could it be? Someone who wanted to kill her? Seeing the brown sugar water delivered to her, she raised it slightly and drank a mouthful. Although she felt warm after drinking it, it did not seem to alleviate much of the pain in her stomach. Half an hour later, Ji-Wan's stomach was still in excruciating pain. She tried her best not to be discovered by Mo Jingshin. Mo Jingshin saw that her complexion was pale and finally lifted the blankets to enter. He directly hugged her from behind. Her entire back was pressed against his chest. Ji-Wan originally wanted to say that she was fine, but she still slowly relaxed in his embrace. The man's hand was warm and strong. He placed it on her abdomen, not allowing her to refuse. At the same time, he pulled the blankets higher and held her cold hands. He gently and slowly rubbed her palms. After a moment, he lowered his eyes to look at Ji-Wan, who still did not feel sleepy. Still in pain. Jean Wan turned her head and looked at him with watery eyes. Fortunately, it's a special situation today. It's only because the seawater was a little cold that I felt uncomfortable. The man's hand continued to gently stroke her abdomen. I've called the doctor over. If you can't sleep, wait for the doctor to check before you sleep. There's no need to call a doctor. It's just my period. There's really no need to trouble a doctor to come so late at night. If it still hurts tomorrow, I'll just go to the hospital to get some medicine. Jean Wan quickly sat up. She had just wrapped herself in a towel, so when she sat up, the towel fell off. Mo Jingshan met her gaze. On her porcelain-like skin, there were traces of kisses from last night at the Ji home. Right now, Jean Wan had her period as a protective talisman and did not think much of it. Her gaze was extremely innocent, and she was so magnanimous that it was as though she had only lost a coat. Didn't you say this afternoon that your flight will be to England tomorrow morning? Jean Wan did not bother with the towel. She reached out to grab the blanket and casually covered her body with it. Recently, the MO Corporation had a project to discuss with a partner in England. Tomorrow, Mo Jingshan would be going to England for a business trip for 2 to 3 days. She had almost forgotten about this matter. Thankfully, nothing major had happened, and it did not affect his work schedule. There's no rush. You can sleep on the plane tomorrow. His gaze was deep as he watched her. His hand pinched her face. Mrs. Mo had quite a fright today. I have to stay by your side. Jean Wan wanted to say that she was not that delicate, but his words made her feel good. She reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck. Following her heart, she took the initiative to kiss his thin, cold lips. Her lips were a little cold and so was his. But in an instant, her touching kiss inexplicably turned into a prairie fire. Their tongues and lips intertwined. He pressed her into his embrace and bent down to hold the back of her neck so that the kiss could deepen. Their lips finally warmed up. At the same time, their bodies heated up as well. Jean Wan was kissed until she panted and retreated slightly. The man in front of her pressed her into the bed. The lingering and scorching kiss caused her to feel slightly dizzy. She could even feel the obvious change in his lower body. It was dangerously pressing against her. Only then did Jean Wan realize that she was completely unaware of the changes in the Passion Valley. Earlier, she was really unguarded. Wait a minute. The situation did not seem optimistic. She suddenly whimpered against his lips. She placed her hands on his chest and felt her tongue go numb from the kiss. I barely escaped death and swam for so long. I feel like my whole body is about to fall apart. And so? The man continued to kiss her, scattering kisses on her white neck. Jean Wan's lips trembled. So, you still have energy? The man paused and glanced at her. His low gaze deepened because of her words. He tightened his grip on her waist and continued to kiss her, intending to prove that he was still energetic. Jean Wan rushed to shout, don't, it hurts. The man on top of her finally paused because of her shout. He lowered his head to see her holding her stomach with a pleading expression. Earlier in the day, when he heard her proudly announce that her period was coming, he had the intention to teach this woman who was so proud that she was about to ascend to the heavens. In the end, after experiencing this storm, this little woman was completely immersed in her own thoughts. She sat on the bed without a stitch of clothing, appearing as though she was waiting for him to butcher her. Mo Jingshan released a light breath. He felt that the self-control he was once so proud of was going to be used up on her sooner or later. Mr. Mo, Dr. Qin is here. Auntie Chen's voice came from outside the room. Mo Jingshan released Jean Wan at the same time and brought her a set of pajamas. It was a very conservative style and asked her to put it on first. Miss Ji caught a cold during her period. Drink some medicine for a few days and keep warm. You should be fine. In the middle of the night, Qin Siding, who was suddenly called to the Yu Garden by Mo Jingshan, did not even have the time to complain. He was forced to treat his wife who was on her period. Jean Wan recognized Qin Siding. He was the second young master of the Qin family in Haicheng. Ever since he was young, he had always been interested in medicine. At a young age, he had given up on business to study medicine. Right now, he was a well-known physician in the country and was even a visiting professor in the medical university. With Mo Jingshan's aloof and taciturn personality, he did not have many friends. However, this young and promising Dr. Qin was one of his few closest friends. Her stomach hurts. Is there any way to relieve it? Mo Jingshan furrowed his brows slightly. Qin Siding's eyelids twitched. He stared at him as though he was looking at a monster. Someone like Mo Jingshan was actually standing here and asking a woman how to not have a stomach ache during her period? Chapter 45. Go to a traditional Chinese medicine hospital and get some prescriptions to warm up the womb, or take some of my Western medicine. But she's had this illness since she was young. It's best to slowly treat her with traditional Chinese medicine, Qin Siding said unhurriedly. At the same time, he glanced at Jin Wan, who was climbing up from the bed. In the past, this eldest Miss Ji used to look at people very fiercely, but now she was like an obedient little wife. When he entered the door just now, he almost thought he was seeing things. Chinese medicine? Auntie Chen took me to get some before, but I didn't drink much. Jin Wan got out of bed, opened the drawer of the bedside cabinet, and rummaged through it. In the end, both Qin Siding and Mo Jingshan's gaze landed on a small white medicine bottle in the corner of the drawer. What is that? Qin Siding's voice suddenly turned cold. Mo Jingshan also looked at Jin Wan, who was stunned, and when she took out the bottle of medicine with a look of realization, he reached out to take it. Qin Siding walked over and took the 2 pills. He took a few glances and put them to his nose to sniff. Miss Ji, have you seen a psychiatrist? Qin Siding suddenly asked. Jin Wan was stunned. She looked at Qin Siding and then at Mo Jingshan, whose expression was unbelievably cold. In the past, Ji Mengran had coaxed her into seeing a psychiatrist because she was in a bad mood. This was also the medication the doctor prescribed for her to alleviate her depression. Ever since she brought it back, she had only taken it a few times. She had even forgotten about the existence of this bottle of medicine in the bedside table. Because she didn't think that her mood during that period of time had reached the stage of depression, although Ji Mengran always said that if she continued to be depressed, something would definitely happen. Ji Mengran wanted to take her to see a psychiatrist and find someone to give her psychological counseling. Those doctors also gave her all kinds of inexplicable advice, telling her to get a divorce immediately so that she could be free as soon as possible. Could it be that this medicine has a problem? Ji Mengran had such a good relationship with Shinharu. It was not entirely impossible for her to do something to the medicine. Jin Wan took a step back. She didn't know what she was afraid of. She inadvertently raised her eyes and met Mo Jingshan's. Mo Jingshan watched her, his voice carrying a hint of sternness. Have you taken this medicine? Jin Wan nodded and then shook her head. I ate it a few times, but I felt uncomfortable after eating it, so I didn't eat it again. When did you eat it? Qin Siding stood at the side and asked coldly. His attitude was not as casual as before. When we were married for just over a month, I was in a particularly bad state. Meng Ran said that she was afraid that I would be too depressed and brought me to see a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist then prescribed this medicine for me, Jin Wan confessed honestly, but her heart was already ringing with alarm. This medicine was definitely not simple. Mo Jingshan stared at her for a long while. The corners of his lips slowly lifted, revealing a deep, mocking smile. But Jin Wan felt that his mocking expression was not directed at her. She suspected that there was something wrong with the medicine Shinharu had given her father, but she had actually forgotten to investigate what exactly the medicine Ji Mengran had forced the doctor to prescribe for her was. This matter had happened too long ago, and she had completely forgotten about it. She could not recall it at all. 10 minutes later, this medicine does not have any effects on the body, but it contains a mixture of drugs that can cause a person's nerves to go haywire and a mild nervous breakdown. Qin Siding pinched the crushed pill in his hand. This is a supplementary medicine used by some small psychiatry clinics to increase the mental activity of patients. It can make it easier for patients with mental illnesses to check for symptoms. In large hospitals, it is not allowed to be used. It is considered a type of banned medicine. Nervous breakdown? Jean Wan raised her eyes. Qin Siding raised his brows, his voice soft and light as he sneered. Miss Ji, your emotions and actions in the past few months seem to be consistent with this symptom. The meaning behind his words was already clear. It turned out that this was the reason why Ji Mengran kept saying that she had become unreasonable in front of Mo Jingshan. Qin Siding glanced at Jean Wan's expression and casually smiled. This medicine doesn't contain any harmful ingredients. Even if you take it, it won't be easily discovered. Since you didn't take much, there shouldn't be a problem. So, Qin Siding removed the sterilized gloves in his hands, raising his chin to glance at Mo Jingshan. He spoke as though he was watching a good show. Oh, Mo called me over in the middle of the night just because your woman took the wrong medicine? Jean Wan, Mo Jingshan's tall and straight figure stood by the door. He looked at the bottle of medicine and slowly placed one hand into his pocket. His thin lips curved slightly. It was a smile, but it was cold. Jean Wan had thought that in this life, she was sufficiently clear-headed and prepared. However, at this moment, she still felt a chill run down her spine. Her hand suddenly warmed. Mo Jingshan approached to hold it. Feeling the coldness of her hand, he calmly tightened his grip. Qin Siding put away his things and removed his white coat. He was only wearing a shirt and trousers underneath. His gaze was light as he watched this scene. You came here in the middle of the night to do free labor, and you even want to feed me a mouthful of dog food? You guys are simply inhumane. Mo Jingshan's thin lips spat out emotionlessly. Do you lack women? Who did not know that in Qin Siding's office in the hospital, there were countless unmarried young ladies who would purposely feign pneumonia or pretend to be sick just to see him? There was a saying in Haicheng that it was better to provoke the smiling fox young Master Qin than to provoke the cold-faced Yama Mo Jingshan. South Qin and North Mo, the two most difficult male gods to deal with among Haicheng's 4 large families. Although the Ji family was also one of Haicheng's 4 large families, in recent years, the Ji family's limelight was no longer as prosperous as it was many years ago. However, the Mo family's foundation had never been shaken. Not to mention Haicheng, if any one of the Mo family members stomped their feet, the nearby provinces would be shaken. Any member of the Mo family was an unparalleled figure. In the military, political, and business realms, there were different divisions, and each had an extraordinary status. I don't lack women, but your woman is really too simple-minded. Qin Siding tilted his head, calmly glancing at Jean Wan. Jean Wan's forehead twitched. Saying that she was simple-minded, saying that she had eaten the wrong medicine, very good. She turned to look at Mo Jingshan by her side. It's already so late, yet Dr. Qin specially drove over because of your call. Does he owe you a favor? Qin Siding tilted his head to look at her, his brows slightly furrowing. He seemed to have suddenly discovered that this Jean Wan was somewhat interesting. Mo Jingshan, you can say that. Jean Wan's eyes immediately brightened. Then, on account of your face, can I ask him to help me with another favor? Chapter 46. Jean Wan took out the medicine she had brought back from the Ji family and presented it to him. This is the medicine my father has been taking recently. Since Dr. Qin is skilled in medicine management, can you help me analyze the ingredients in this? You really treat me as the Yu Garden's private doctor? Qin Siding raised his brows. Jean Wan had yet to speak when a low voice sounded from behind her. You're not? Qin Siding's brows were about to explode. His lips trembled, but he suddenly turned his face away and snorted. He took the medicine from Jean Wan's hands and opened it to smell it. The smell of this medicine is not clear. It should be a new type of medicine imported from abroad. There's no point in directly analyzing it here. I need a machine to analyze it. Do you mind if I take it away? I don't mind. Jean Wan hurriedly said. Qin Siding tossed the medicine into his pocket. All right, it's getting late. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. In front of the Yu Garden, the moon was bright. Qin Siding walked out of the front door of the villa, casually adjusting the collar of his shirt. The white coat casually placed on his arm was dazzlingly white under the moonlight. I heard that you specially sent people to monitor the Zhou family's every move? Qin Siding asked casually. Mo Jingshan raised his eyelids, a cold smile flashing across his eyes. Are you trying to say that you're well informed? Is it because of the woman inside? Qin Siding continued to ask coldly. Mo Jingshan calmly said, You can scram now. Qin Siding raised his brows, lifting the corner of his lips. His voice was cold. Don't tell me, towards this Jin Wan, you're starting to get serious? Mo Jingshan tilted his head to look at him. After a long time without receiving a reply, Qin Siding smiled mildly. Lost control? This isn't your original intention of marrying her. Are you prepared to be the first person to be kicked out of the Yu Garden, Dr. Qin? Mo Jingshan's gaze was unruffled. Qin Siding snorted. I drove over so late at night and you're not even going to say a word of thanks? First, return the life you owe me. The sound of the car leaving could be heard. Jin Wan was in the room, opening the curtains to look outside. When Mo Jingshan returned, the first thing he saw was this little woman pressing her face against the cold window. She appeared as though she had suddenly realized something and was deep in thought. Dr. Qin left? Jin Wan heard the door and turned back. Yes. Mo Jingshan watched as she pressed her entire body against the cold window, calmly saying, It's too cold in front of the window. Don't lean so close. Jin Wan turned and walked up to her. Tell me, if I hadn't been disturbed by all these things, would I have fallen in love with you? Before she could finish her sentence, the man suddenly kissed her. The kiss was a little heavy, a little deep, and even a little impolite. Jin Wan only had time to let out a low whimper. Her waist was circled, and in the blink of an eye, she was pushed against the wall by him. He kissed her until her lips began to feel numb, and her entire body softened to the point where she could barely stand. She didn't quite understand. Why did he suddenly make her feel like he was kissing her with some sort of aggressive emotion? After a long time, the man's lips were still pressed against hers. Gradually, he pressed his forehead against hers, and his eyes locked onto hers. Jin Wan felt that if they continued kissing, neither of them would be able to sleep tonight. Besides, he had to go to the airport first thing in the morning. The moment she thought of the 3 days of separation, she directly buried her head against his neck, softly saying, Stop kissing. If you continue, you'll lose control. It's not like you don't know my special situation today. When Mo Jingshan heard the words lose control, he did not speak for a moment. A moment later, Jin Wan heard the man's voice land on top of her head. How many days? What do you mean by how many days? She raised her head. The moment she met the man's burning gaze, she immediately coughed in embarrassment. For days, sometimes 5 days, every month her great-aunt would only end after 4 to 5 days. It had always been very accurate. After thinking for a moment, she said, So tonight, if you don't plan on sleeping in the master bedroom because you don't want to rest well, I don't mind. Seeing her relaxed and radiant expression, Mo Jingshan's heart moved. He held the back of her head and lowered his head to kiss her. Jin Wan was kissed until she did not even have the strength to push him away. She had just softened in his embrace when she heard the man's low and hoarse voice press against her lips. Wait for me to come back, then I'll deal with you. Wait for him to come back from England in a few days? Jin Wan's heart trembled along with his voice. Her 2 hands circled around his neck, reluctantly replying hoarsely. Under the misty moonlight he seemed to smile. Then he kissed her deeply, kissing her until her limbs were weak. Even her voice sounded like a cat's meowing. Finally, he let her go. He carried her, who was kissed until she no longer had any strength left, to the bed. He lifted the blankets and stuffed her in. This man's restraint and calmness were too strong. Under such circumstances, he could still stay in the master bedroom and hug her to sleep. However, to Jin Wan, this could be considered a gift. After all, he would be flying to England tomorrow. If the two of them had to sleep in separate rooms tonight, she most likely would not be able to sleep well. The next morning, Jin Wan originally wanted to wake up early to send Mo Jingshan off. In the end, she slept in his arms the entire night. She slept too soundly and deeply. When he left, he did not wake her up. When she woke up in the morning, it was already past 7. Auntie Chen said that Mo Jingshan had already left at 5 in the morning. Jean Wan sat by the dining table, eating breakfast alone. She stirred the porridge in her bowl in boredom. She really did not expect that Mo Jingshan would only fly to England for a few short days. From the very first day, she actually began to miss him to death. This heart that was gradually becoming restless because of him, could it be considered paying back what she owed him in their previous life? "Madam, do you not have an appetite?" Auntie Chen saw that she did not drink much porridge and brought her a glass of milk. Jean Wan received the cup and placed it down. She did not drink it. She supported her chin with one hand and continued to stir the porridge in the bowl. She casually asked, "Auntie Chen, in the past, did Mo Jingshan always return on time when he went on a business trip? For example, if he was away for 3 days, would he really return in 3 days? Or would he occasionally be delayed by a few days? Or would he bring it forward?" Auntie Chen immediately smiled in understanding. It turned out that she was already lovesick as soon as they separated. In the past, Mr. Mo would not return for 10 days to half a month. She had never seen Jean Wan so despondent. He had only just left, and she was already counting the days. "Sir rarely talks about the company's matters at home. I'm not sure how long he goes on a business trip." Jean Wan continued to stir the porridge in the bowl, glancing at the clear, bright sky outside. She felt as though her mood had flown away with him. All of a sudden, the phone placed on the table rang. Jean Wan lowered her eyes to see Mo Jingshan's private number flashing on the screen. Even she herself did not notice the change in her expression. She quickly picked up the call. "You're awake." Chapter 47. "Seeing that you were sleeping too soundly, I couldn't bear to." Mo Jingshan chuckled softly. Auntie Chen watched from the side. Jean Wan's lips were suddenly smiling as though a flower was about to bloom. Although she did not speak, her smile was silently sweet. "Have you eaten breakfast?" "Not yet." Jean Wan gently stirred the porridge in the bowl. The man's voice immediately turned harsh. "Auntie Chen didn't make breakfast for you?" "She did. I'm eating now. I woke up too late and just came down to eat." Her lack of appetite was her own problem. She definitely could not shift the blame to Auntie Chen. "Eat properly. Things like last night, I'll take care of them in the future. Don't let your imagination run wild." Was he here to supervise her eating breakfast and to comfort her? Jean Wan was like a kitten being caressed. She responded with an "oh," and took the opportunity when Auntie Chen left to whisper, "I'm afraid my appetite won't be good these 3 days. If you want me to eat properly, you have to come back early." Mo Jingshan, did she mean that without him around she wouldn't even be able to eat properly? In the past, she wanted to push him 800 feet away, but now, she was acting like a spoiled child. Mo Jingshan chuckled softly and hoarsely. "Be obedient. Finish the breakfast Auntie Chen made. You're not allowed to leave a single bite." Jean Wan glanced at the porridge and more than 10 soup dumplings on the table. "How can I possibly eat so much? Even if I can't, I have to eat." Although Jean Wan said she couldn't eat, she began to eat the porridge while talking on the phone. She then picked up the soup dumplings, but Auntie Chen rushed over to take them away. "Madam, it's a little cold after being left out for too long. Let me heat them up for you." Jean Wan immediately mouthed to her, "Just heat a few less." In the end, after Jean Wan hung up the phone, Auntie Chen brought out the soup dumplings a few minutes later. It was still an entire basket, more than 10 of them. Seeing Jean Wan's expression, Auntie Chen said with a smile, "Before Mr. Mo left, he said that while he's not around, madam, you have to eat all 3 meals at home. You have to have a balanced diet, and you can't eat too little. Sir said you've been too thin recently." Jean Wan lowered her head to look at her chest. She had what she should have and what should be big. It wasn't that she was thin. The next day, the Lan Shan residence was located in a secluded location in the center of Haicheng. Jean Wan walked in and saw that the hedonistic young master, Han Tianyuan, was currently seated in front of a mahjong table, playing cards. "Miss Ji came so early? Come, let's play a few rounds together." Han Tianyuan held the cigarette in his mouth as he smiled at her with narrowed eyes. Jean Wan calmly glanced at the few people inside. They were all young masters of Hai Cheng's upper class. She expressionlessly took out the agreement she had just brought from the Han Corporation's legal department. Ignoring Han Tianyuan's narrowed eyes, she directly placed the agreement on the round tea-colored table to the side. The transfer agreement has been prepared by your company's legal department. Come here and sign it. Jean Wan had never been interested in such occasions. Her fingers gently tapped on the table, showing her impatience. Han Tianyuan used the tip of his tongue to touch the corner of his mouth, pushed his cards, and snorted as he got up and walked over. Miss Ji, are you sure you want to take over the 2 real estate companies under my name? What else? Han Tianyuan sloppily sat on the sofa in front of her. In the end, a newborn calf isn't afraid of a tiger. Right now, the real estate market is clearly in a tight spot. If Miss Ji insists on taking over the companies in my hands during this time of crisis, when the time comes and you lose a few $100 million, please don't come crying to me. Jean Wan ignored him, patiently waiting for him to sign. Miss Ji is indeed as arrogant as before. To think that back when I was chasing after you, you had such an insufferably arrogant expression. As he spoke, Han Tianyuan received the pen that his secretary handed over. At the same time, he mocked. It seems like Miss Ji's skills in bed are impressive. Otherwise, how could you have subdued Mo Jingshan? Jinwan expressionlessly looked at Han Tianyuan. Her gaze was cold. You're talking so much nonsense just to sell the companies. Are you complaining that I'm giving you too much money? 30 million yuan was nothing more than giving face to the Han family. Otherwise, based on the situation that day, with Mo Jingshan present, this Han Tianyuan most likely would not even dare to ask for 30 cents. Han Tianyuan's expression turned slightly ugly. He snorted, but in the end, he still quickly signed. Jean Wan checked the agreement and could not be bothered to say another word to him. She turned to leave. Miss Ji. Han Tianyuan suddenly called out to her in a lazy voice. Jean Wan did not turn back to look at him. She only indifferently glanced at the sky outside the Lan Shan residence. The weather these 2 days was not bad. She could go out for a walk and settle the handover of the company as soon as possible. Han Tianyuan's tone carried an unclear meaning. Mo Jingshan's background is not as simple as you think. On account of your 30 million yuan, don't blame me for not reminding you. Jean Wan glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. At this moment, a waiter from the Lan Shan residence came over with coffee and desserts, placing them on the table in front of him. Miss Ji, do you not intend to sit down and eat before leaving? Jean Wan's lips revealed a faint, cold smile. Young Master Han, enjoy your meal. After finishing her words, she held the agreement in her hands and walked away without looking back. Before signing the agreement, Jean Wan had already investigated the situation of the 2 real estate companies. She knew what Han Tianyuan meant when he said to be careful not to lose a few $100 million yuan. Their internal funds were already lacking, and they even owed the bank more than 10 million yuan. However, under the company's name, there were 2 half-completed seagull residential areas, as well as a commercial building close to the city center. However, due to the lack of funds, construction was temporarily halted. Buying over these 2 companies in anyone's eyes was an act of seeking death. However, Jean Wan had carefully studied the unfinished buildings under the company's name. The locations were all very good. From what she remembered, not long after, when the price of real estate and land in the country continued to soar, the buildings in these areas were no longer real estate that ordinary people could afford. If they were to multiply, they would be worth at least 400 million yuan. Right now, the problem was that the 2 companies had changed their legal heads. If the previous partners immediately withdrew their investments because of this, it would be extremely disadvantageous to her. Just as Jean Wan was preparing to drive back to the Yu Garden, Han Tianyuan suddenly walked out of the Lan Shan residence and knocked on her car window. Here, take this. He handed her a gilded invitation letter. Jean Wan received it, opening it to take a look. Banquet invitation letter? Right now, what you're most worried about is the partners withdrawing their investments. The day after tomorrow's charity banquet, There will be many investors who have worked with our Han family for many years present. You understand, I've already given you this opportunity. Whether or not you can succeed will depend on your own abilities. How do you know I won't be able to get this invitation letter? Jin Wan was suspicious. Chapter 48. Her instincts told her that this hedonistic son of the Han family would definitely not be so friendly to her. Before this, she had already considered this matter. However, the host of this charity banquet was the Han family. The Ji family was not participating. Furthermore, the number of invitations was limited. At this moment, she really did not know how she could successfully attend this banquet. Originally, she had planned to choose another path. She did not expect that Han Tianyuan would directly hand the invitation to her. Based on Han Tianyuan's temperament, he could not wait for her to be unlucky. He could not wait for the company to close down and everyone in Haicheng to watch the show with him. Would he be so kind? Han Tianyuan placed his hands in his pockets and turned around. He scolded with a smile. Although the company has changed owners, the founder still has my, Han Tianyuan's, name engraved on it. If it really closes down, I really can't afford to lose this face. Furthermore, no matter what, I have to give some face to the person behind you, Mo Jingshan. It's just two real estate companies. It's not a big business. Why would young Master Han care so much? Jin Wan did not believe him at all. However, she still smiled leisurely. What founder? Didn't you snatch this company from someone else's hands back then? Do you want it? If you don't, I'll take it away. Han Tianyuan calmly glanced at her. I created an opportunity for you out of goodwill. Do you have to be like a hedgehog that pierces a few holes in someone else's body to feel comfortable? You, Miss Ji, are naturally unreasonable. If it weren't for the fact that your face is truly beautiful, this old man would not have bothered to do you this favor. This is a world that only cares about appearances. Serves you right? This old man was once bewitched by your face. Even now, I still remember it. After speaking, he directly threw the invitation into her car. A world that only cared about appearances, these words coming from someone like Han Tianyuan's mouth were not abrupt. He was indeed this shallow. Otherwise, Jin Wan would not have ignored him even once. She did not say more. She picked up the invitation and glanced at it. She only calmly said, "Thanks." Han Tianyuan raised his brows. He coldly snorted and turned to leave. Returning to the Lan Shan residence, he picked up his phone and sent out a message. The invitation has been delivered. 2 days later, the Sea City Business Alliance charity banquet was held at the Royal Garden Hotel. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the lobby of the hotel was bustling with activity. Although Haicheng had many prominent families, they were also divided into different factions. The Ji family and the Han family did not have much cooperation, so Jin Wan was not familiar with the upper-class people who came today. There was a waiter leading the way in front of the hotel. When Jin Wan walked in, she saw people drinking and chatting in groups. In the brightly lit hall, there were all kinds of exquisite snacks and drinks. The guests entered one after another. "Miss, would you like a glass of champagne?" Jin Wan was walking in when a waiter came up with a tray of champagne in his hand and handed it to her respectfully and politely. Almost everyone around was holding a wine glass. Jin Wan did not suspect anything and reached out to receive it. However, her fingers paused on the glass and she glanced at the waiter. After all, she wasn't familiar with the people here, and it was too easy for her to get the invitation. She had to be careful. "I'm sorry, my stomach isn't feeling too good. Do you have mineral water? Help me pour a glass of water?" The waiter nodded and turned to bring the water. Jin Wan saw that the bottle he brought was clean and unopened. She only reached out to receive it after he poured the water into a wine glass. She lowered her eyes to look at the clear glass. The water inside was clean and without any impurities. The banquet hall was filled with the fragrance of clothes and the fragrance of various high-grade perfumes. It had been a long time since Jin Wan participated in such an event in her previous life. She was not used to the smell and choked uncomfortably. She cleared her throat and lowered her head to drink a mouthful of water. In the distance, Zhou Yinyan, who was standing in the corner, glanced at Jinwan. Seeing that she had drunk the water, she immediately wore a satisfied smile. She knew that this Jinwan was very shrewd and guarded against others. She would not easily drink the wine that was handed to her. She had smeared a lot of the powerful medicine into the goblets that she had prepared beforehand. In order to avoid any accidents, she had personally prepared the goblets. She had smeared so much of it inside and outside. As long as Jinwan drank anything from the glass, it was guaranteed that she would not be able to escape tonight. Wasn't she, Jinwan, relying on Mo Jingshan's protection? After tonight, after Jinwan had been taken by several men, let's see if Mo Jingshan would still place this broken flower in his eyes. After tonight, even if she had 3 heads and 6 arms, she would definitely not be able to escape. Jinwan only took a sip. She seemed to have sensed the gaze from the corner and immediately shifted the glass away. His clean and fair fingers gently rubbed the side of the cup. After pausing for a moment, his eyes suddenly turned and looked in the direction of the corner. Although Zhou Yanyan's position was very far away and the lighting there was very dim, Jinwan was still able to see her. Her hand paused on the edge of the glass. Without batting an eyelid, she glanced at Zhou Yanyan's flickering gaze that she had noticed. Zhou Yanyan was here? After the previous incident, the Zhou family actually allowed her to attend such a banquet. Her gaze earlier, Jinwan placed the glass in her hand down, suspecting that this was a trap. She cautiously turned around, only to see that the banquet had already begun. There were too many people entering from the main entrance, and the main entrance was temporarily closed. She directly headed toward the bathroom, temporarily avoiding the crowd. There was no one in the bathroom. Jinwan stood in front of the mirror and released cold water to wash her hands. As she washed, she calmed herself down and thought about how she could successfully leave this place. In such a situation, if she only considered Han Tianyuan, no matter how much courage he would not dare to do anything to her in such a place. However, if it was Zhou Yanyan who had lost all her face not long ago, then that might not be the case. Once a woman wanted revenge, there was nothing she could do. However, as she washed her hands, she felt her vision gradually turning blurry. An unfamiliar heat surged through her body. Jinwan was confused. She raised her head to look at herself in the mirror. When he saw that his own face was also gradually showing a bit of a flirtatious blush, alarm bells instantly rang in his heart. Earlier on, she did not drink any alcohol. She had personally seen the bottle of mineral water being opened. Furthermore, she had only taken a sip. How could it be? Are you surprised? All of a sudden, Zhou Yanyan turned into the bathroom from an unknown direction. Seeing Jinwan's guarded gaze, she coldly laughed. Did you think that it would be fine just because you didn't drink? As expected, Miss G's background is clean. You've never come into contact with the erotic circles of the upper class. There are many types of drugs that can be used to deal with disobedient women. One of them is to smear it on the glass. Just a little bit of your saliva is enough to make you excited for an entire night and lose all rationality. Furthermore, you even took a sip. On that glass, I personally smeared quite a bit of drug. You drugged me in such a place? Jinwan forced herself to calm down. The effects of the drug took effect very quickly. She placed one hand on the sink and stared coldly at Zhou Yanyan. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.